Charles, hello.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
Where's your Stetson?
Yeah, I left it in Texas, I guess. You know, did you ever see that right before he was killed, I think minutes before he was killed, John Kennedy was meeting with a bunch of people at a breakfast or something, and they gave him a hat, and in what seemed a little rude, he didn't put it on. And he said, "You got to come to the White House to see me wear it."
Yeah, should have worn that hat.
Should have, yeah. You would have protected him.
It's funny, I mean, one of the times that I was down in Texas, I decided, I had this upstate property, and I said, you know, I ought to get some cowboy boots. And I had like a whole bunch of extra time. I go into this Fort Worth, store or whatever to buy cowboy boots. And initially, you know, I thought, oh, those look nice. And I spent about, 3 minutes in the store, and suddenly everything looked the same. All the boots looked the same to me. I didn't buy any.
I think you and I are not cowboys, Charles.
No.
So today we're going to be talking about the spies who materially misrepresented me.
This, again, the art department, once again, I mean, you got to raise their pay. I mean, the tax cut and all that. I mean, everyone else is giving the bonuses out, right? This is really something.
Well, thank you, Charles. And the pay grade is determined by the crowd. We've got a really rapidly expanding audience. We've just passed, I think, 54,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if people are enjoying the art department, the reporting, the news, the travel, they're free to become sponsors.
Well, now to people who don't understand podcasting the way you do, I mean, maybe you should explain the significance of, was 50,000 a big number, a small number? I mean, is it a milestone, an important one?
Well, when we passed 50, you remember King James said that he had determined that I think less than 5% of all YouTube channels reach 50,000 or higher. So definitely getting up there, and hopefully we can continue to grow it. 100,000 is in sight, Charles.
Well done, sir. Well done. And again, this is just a fantastic artwork. Today, as you can tell, we're going to be focusing on the UK. In the UK, how donors in the UK, especially including the sorely taxed, i.e., running budget deficit and deep trouble, a lot of debt, UK government is not only directly funding these frauds and has been doing so for now, several decades almost, but how they haven't been regulating charities properly, they haven't been regulating donors to those charities properly, and it's a big tale we're going to tell here.
Absolutely. And you're talking about funding of things. It's come to my attention that a lot of people don't realize that simply watching Sunday with Charles or Crowdsource the Truth doesn't actually result in any income. The channel is totally not monetized on YouTube or any platform and is completely reliant on community sponsorship. So you've prepared, as usual, a marvelous array of extremely informative slides, and perhaps we should get right into those.
Great. Well, so one thing that people need to understand here is that our efforts now over these many months have begun to gain traction from multiple governments around the world. We spent, I don't know how many recent broadcasts talking with the great Fabien Chalandon. If you were watching this from Japan, Fabien, Ohio gozaimasu, which I think means something like good morning.
Wow.
But Fabien has done an immense amount of work, in particular educating us via these podcasts about what was going on in France, what was going on with Unitaid, and he's also disclosed that he had sent an extensive file into the very famous and powerful French prosecutor who has been, as shall we say, it's a French term, bird dogging.
Is that a French term?
No. Bird dogging this thing back for many months. So we're going to talk about her in some depth. The French government is the biggest single declared donor indirectly via Unitaid to the Clinton Foundation. But a very large one is the UK government. And I believe, I'm no expert on history, but I believe there's a certain amount of tension between the French and the English. And it certainly would be. So the French, I think the French are way ahead of the English, as far as I can tell, in investigating these Clinton Foundation frauds. And the bad news for you, Theresa May, and the bad news for you in Parliament, and the bad news for you in the Cabinet is that there are long-standing and deep ties between and among Clinton charities with British government entities that have ill-advisedly sent hundreds of millions of US dollars to these frauds. And the question, as is the case in the United States and in France, the question is not, are these frauds? The question, a much more interesting question for Donald Trump, for his allies in France and maybe in the UK, is how many people inside the UK government have known about these frauds? How many people inside the UK media have known about these frauds, and rather than do something about them, said, you know
nothing.
What? Well, better than that. Say, you know, I got something now on Sarkozy. I've got something now on Blair. I've got something on these different people. And if I get in trouble, I can always lord that over them. So what this fraud has become is sort of a two-edged or multi-edged blade that cuts everybody it touches. You know, the second you give money to this and take a tax deduction you shouldn't have gotten, the second you allow as so much money to go to this mess and then leak back into political campaigns and go into crooked deals and don't do anything about it, you know,
You're in it.
You're in it. And so we're going to talk at some depth. And as you listen to this presentation, ladies and gentlemen around the world, what I would like you to keep in the back of your mind is this notion that in the United States of America, the laws of this country are supposed to be equally administered, whether you're rich or poor, without fear or favor. And right now, I can predict safely that there's one person who's not watching this podcast, and that's Representative Corinne Brown, who for her role in an $800,000 charity fraud is rotting, and I say rotting because I think she's 71, in a federal prison for the next as many as 5 years, depending on her behavior and the rules about how long you have to be in there for.
You can't get YouTube in jail?
I don't think so
What
easily.
about Periscope, Gab.ai,
Maybe you can get Gab, or maybe
Facebook,
no, VK. You got
VK.com.
VK.
We're killing it on VK.com. Privyet to our friends in Russia. We're typically getting over 150 views on a social media network where I have only 2 friends who I don't even know,
right,
and is in a country where we're not even speaking the language.
So it's Boris and Natasha, your 2 friends?
Yeah, that's right.
Rocky and Bullwinkle?
Yeah. We must get moose and squirrel.
You do that excellent.
I love that show.
That's great. We're going to have to do one of them.
Yeah.
So for our new viewers especially, we put this disclaimer up here just to make sure people understand that we're not responsible for the primary documents, you know, or the secondary analysis that is out there in the world, but we have an absolute right to evaluate that information. And I caught somebody whose name I won't even dignify on Twitter giving me smack about this disclaimer, saying, you know, because I say no attempt has been made to verify the accuracy of underlying source material, so, oh, major gotcha, Ortel hasn't verified. I'm not going to try to verify whether a tax return submitted under penalties of perjury is actually the real tax return that is put up on the Clinton Foundation website. You want to make an issue of that?
Take it up with the Clinton Foundation.
Take it up with the Clinton Foundation. I mean, this is standard boilerplate language that is drawn from my experience on Wall Street, writing fairness opinions, rendering opinions in litigation. We absolutely can't check every document that's out there to make sure that, you know, the lease agreement, for example, provided by the National Archives and Records Administration as a formal exhibit to a contract, whether that document is indeed the lease agreement. We can't check that. We rely on the National Archives, a government entity, you know, to not be lying to us.
Well, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, if it is shown through some sort of verification to be fraudulent, that's just more crap on them.
Exactly right. And equally, if somebody out there sees anything that we do and says, hey, you missed this perspective, or this doesn't look right to us, and here's why, by all means, and human beings make mistakes, actually. So I'm sure I make mistakes. I don't know, Jason, you may never make mistakes, but
I don't know about that.
From time to time, I make mistakes.
There was a tall guy living here for a few months. That was a mistake.
There we go. But so this is a standard disclaimer, and here what we try to do is we might want to hit this link if we can, Jason, the playlist, which is so artfully put together by you.
Thank you very much.
And you know, we now I guess have 59 separate videos, and what this says over here is that 5,704 times people have looked at the summary of the videos, not to mention each of the videos. And I think this most recent one we did with Jerry has more than 45,000 views.
It's always great when we go and speak with Dr. Corsi.
Yeah, 47,000 views. I mean, that's a lot within 5 days. And I have been checking around with people in the mainstream and the podcast, alternative media, and to get that many views in less than a week for something that's almost 2 hours long is testament to the fact that you really are building an audience here.
With your help, of course.
Well, I'm just, I just show up, make my actor's minimum, and I go back and
scale. You're working for scale.
I'm working
Charles?
for scale. You put that quarter in the bucket over there, I'll be fine.
Right. It's better than working for peanuts, right?
Well, unless you like peanuts.
That's right.
They're getting expensive.
That's right.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh well, yeah. Should we talk about this? Whoops.
Sure. Yeah. Please
Right.
do.
Let's show that. So from time to time, we get, you're actually inspiring crowdsource art projects, Charles. And if people are familiar with, Scott Baio had a TV series. He, of course, was a Trump supporter. I sat next to him at a sushi restaurant in Colorado when I was, I don't know if you know this, but 21st Century 3D was the first company ever to photograph the ESPN X Games in 3D.
Really?
And I sat next to Scott Baio at a sushi restaurant. But this is actually Charles with Scott Baio's haircut, and you're in charge.
Yeah,
this is a great piece. The complete first season, so it's got all the different graphics from the art department there featured, and of course a nice rendition of you, Charles. So that's nice when people send in artwork like that. We really appreciate it.
That's pretty funny. Well done.
Yes.
So why don't we take, what we're going to do, as we always do, we like to begin each broadcast of the Sunday with Charles series to talk about what has recently happened in the last week or so that we think is very, very significant. And there's divided news. The first, more recent news was that Joe DeGenova, our contact, and his wife, Victoria Tensing, Fox reported that they were going to join President Trump's personal legal team, team actually, but my fault. See, there's a mistake.
That's all right.
And it turns out that moments ago, actually, there's been a revelation that they are not going to be joining to deal with the Mueller thing because they supposedly have conflicts.
Oh.
And but they are going to work with Trump on other matters. So these are very smart people. I've had the privilege to get to know them, and they are doing wonderful work. Most recently with this William Douglas Campbell, who's the Uranium One informant. But they're very, very sharp and experienced and quick lawyers, and I rely on some of their analysis very heavily. So we'll see what really will happen here, and then we'll go back into the. So speaking of this William D. Campbell, he was being trash talked by elements in the mainstream media and the Democrats sort of to a person came out with this after it was clear that he had in fact been talking to congressional investigators. There were all these leaked stories saying, no, he didn't provide anything new. It's all been debunked. There's nothing
debunked.
They
love to
that
say
one,
things were debunked.
We should be able to do, I know I keep coming up with ideas for the art department, but to do a conga line of people saying, nothing new here, it's debunked. Anyway, that's what happened. The mainstream media, came out with ridiculous stories, and this Campbell guy pushed back hard in an interview with, I think, John Solomon and Alison Spahn at The Hill. And there's more coming. He's done on-camera interviews for them in The Hill that they're being bled out onto Hannity. But the important thing for people to understand here is the reason why I would be extremely nervous if I were the Clintons at this stage, and any donors that gave any money starting in around 2006 through 9, is that to date, what the strategy was under a theory that, in my view, under the theory that Hillary would have been president, was to restate everything back to 2010 and think that you'd have like a firewall, that anything prior to 2010, because of the passage of the statute of limitations, would make it impossible for anyone to go and make an issue of problems that occurred through December 31st, 2009. I got news for you. That legal theory is completely wrong according to people who are experts on the law. I'm not a lawyer. That legal theory is just couldn't be wronger.
Well, the other problem with it is she lost.
Did she? Is that what happened? But anyway, the facts are that, just to address this briefly, that when you get federal tax exemption for a charity, the grant of that federal tax exemption is conditional. It is never permanent. It depends primarily upon whether what you said in the application was true and accurate. It also depends on whether you get the application on one basis and then totally gut the basis for your tax exemption by engaging in prohibited activities after getting the tax exemption. And the IRS has an absolute right to go back and retroactively revoke your charter, which has a devastating result for a charity like this, if the IRS gets off its ass and does what it should have been doing for a long time. Because what happens then is that depending on how far back they go, and depending on who the major league donors are that may have contributed to this fraud, the IRS can attack the charity itself and say, look, you were not a charity, you're a for-profit taxable entity, and you owe back taxes on your corporate income. And then you can go against all of the major donors and say, hey, that tax deduction you took if you're an individual, you shouldn't have taken, or if you're a private foundation, that money that you gave was not a grant to a charity, so it fouls your private foundation, you can go after them. And with all of that happening, and with the IRS investigating, and with the FBI investigating, if you can prove it that this is actually a vast criminal conspiracy, I won't say it's left-wing or right-wing, it's just the roadkill wing criminal conspiracy, then what you're after are the big moneyed trustees of the Clinton Foundation and the accounting firms and the law firms and any experts that have stood behind trying to say this is in fact a real deal. All those people have massive economic potential liability, and there are a lot of lawyers out there who've got mouths to feed. They've got kids in law school, they've got fancy apartments and homes in the Hamptons, and
they work by the hour.
And they work by the hour. So these class action lawsuits, I mean, they can generate a significant amount of coin here for the legal community and for our various overstretched federal, state, and foreign governments. So what he's talking about is really serious stuff, and the fact that they're already sort of dinging him, the mainstream press and the conga line, doing that, suggests that he's really close to the heart of the matter here.
Right. Charles, what happened to the guy that's replacing Lois Lerner at the IRS? Is he in there? Is he doing anything yet?
I don't think he's in there yet, and I think the problem, we hear John Bolton's going to take over as National Security Advisor, and people are
concerned about that.
Pros and cons, but some say that he's ready to take a knife to all the Obama and maybe the Bush holdovers even.
I heard that this morning, and that made me feel a little better, but I thought he was a Bush neocon. I think he was more Reagan. He predates Bush, but I don't know. We'll find out. But staying just on this, though, the fact is that it's fantastic that Campbell is, cooperating. It's fantastic that we're talking here about a period that goes well back before 2009, and and it's fantastic that they're talking about this Uranium One thing tying directly into the Clinton Global Initiative, which, by the way, never existed. As a technical matter, it was never validly formed as a charity. It never was a charity. Right. It's basically a business development exercise. Venture philanthropy.
Venture philanthropy, you got it, yeah. So another thing that's happened here is that more and more people, and this Sarah Carter, we should probably try to get her on your show.
I would love that.
She is doing fantastic work raising valid questions about Mueller's many conflicts of interest. And when you look at the team here that is supposedly, remember the reason why we have a Mueller investigation is that Sessions immediately recused himself, and the feeling was there were too many conflicts of interest to have the Justice Department apparatus investigate the question of possible meddling in the 2016 election. So on that basis, a call was made to get this guy Mueller, of all people, to do the investigating. Now that call was made by Rod Rosenstein, and I was reminded this morning, Jason, there's something we've already covered about Rod Rosenstein. Do you remember what it is?
that he was the guy. It slipped out of my head, Charles. I'm sorry.
So what happened was, we covered this before, that,
Yeah.
that we found that we've talked extensively about how the Clinton Foundation went off the rails, how it was under investigation by the FBI, how there was a grand jury, multiple grand juries were impaneled. Dopey James Comey was leading the charge, in theory, in the early period, and then he became the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein's current position. In this period, 2001 to 2005, and the person at the Department of Justice who was responsible for deciding whether something should be criminally prosecuted for tax fraud from
Right.
2001 to 2005 was none other than
Rod
Dopey
Rosenstein.
Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
So here you have people who are to investigate the question of what really happened in 2015-16. You must investigate what was going on with the Clinton Foundation and the non-investigation exoneration exercise. And to do that right, you've got to go back all the way, actually, before 1997. But you could do an okay job if you started in January 2001. And the second you go down that track, you're implicating, you've got to be asking very tough questions of Mueller, very tough questions of Rosenstein, very tough questions about uranium, very tough questions about Ramboxy and the Clinton Foundation, all these things. And, you know, I understand that when you're head of the FBI, there's a lot going on, and, you know, you can't say...
You got a lot of stuff to cover up.
You got, yeah, for 12 years. I understand that if you're basically running the Justice Department as the number 2 to the Attorney General, again, Comey would have had a lot of things going on, and Rosenstein now has a lot of things going on. But surely, I mean, of all the law schools, what's that line from Casablanca? Of all the law schools
in all the world,
in all the world,
why's Rosenstein got to walk into mine?
Right in my bar, with, you know, arm in arm with Bob Mueller. I mean,
What, doesn't Trump know this, that Rosenstein was involved?
So what I'm guessing, I'm just guessing now, that there's an elaborate. I actually used to love. I won't admit until how late, Mad Magazine. You know, I thought it was a lot of fun, especially that spy versus spy stuff.
And the fold-up thing.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. So I used to love that. But, you know, I wonder whether in the beginning Trump and his team were caught flat-footed. They didn't expect that they would have this type of vicious assault, extra-legal assault, you know, from so many quarters.
Yeah.
That's on the one. I think it's fair to say that's probably true, as a guess. But maybe what they've been doing is being extremely clever and letting all these people show their hands in ways that now, when the Horowitz report comes out and the work of the prosecutor comes out, entraps, maybe Trump is in fact entrapping the people who think they were going to get him. We'll find out.
That would be interesting. I mean, so many people from the time of the campaign have been saying that he's playing 4D chess and whatever. I mean, I think he's playing poker is what he's doing. He's got his hand, and they always say you play the players, not the cards. So we'll see.
We'll see. So if we go back into the slides quickly, we have to give enormous chops or props, or whatever the right phrase is, to Judicial Watch. And if we can't hit that one link.
Judicial Watch has great chops, and therefore we will give them props.
All right, now you're speaking the language correctly. So this is really, really important. So important that I contacted Tom and their top investigator, you know, offline. This is, if I were, you know, sleeping, having difficulty sleeping before I now explain what this is all about, you know, I would guess that, you know, Hillary Clinton's going to be walking, you know, around wherever she's living now like Banquo's ghost, I mean, for the rest of her life. Because what's going on here is there was a very suspicious guy, and it's part of a suspicious pattern with the Clintons. They get young people and they lift them way, I got no, you know, nothing against doing this in lawful activities, but they take very young people in the 20s, early 30s, and they give them these gigantic jobs raising money.
Right.
Now, how is this Dennis Cheng, who we don't really know where he's from, how is some guy in his 20s?
London School of Economics.
London, and Swarthmore. And how is he going to be raising all this money? Or is he like Doug Band and who's the other guy? Andy Kessel, and these other people, Tammy, whatever, Tammy name will come to me soon, and a whole bunch of young people like that. You know, maybe they're just given these roles with the instructions, thou shalt not ask any questions. Just
Well, but also I think it's your natural tendency. I mean, you go to work for somebody like Bill Clinton when you are, have aspirations for a political career. I mean, I did a one-day shoot with Steven Spielberg, and everybody who was on my crew was like, "Oh my God, Steven Spielberg! It's like the biggest day of your life."
And Spielberg was like, "Oh my God, Jason Goodman."
No, he was polite.
Was he?
Interested in the 3D camera, but he was just very
Right.
in and out doing his interview. But I'm saying there's such an element of being starstruck. Like, you're not going to question something. If Steven Spielberg told me, tilt down, I'm not going to be like, nah. You listen to the guy. So same thing. I mean, Bill Clinton tells you what to do. I think you do it.
Well, if we could just quickly hit back to that thing. So the significance of the Dennis Cheng thing is he was a fundraiser. You're not supposed to mix political fundraising.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. You're not supposed to mix political fundraising with charitable fundraising. You're strictly prohibited from doing that, right? Mm-hmm. So he was helpful to Hillary Clinton raising money for her Senate campaign. Then he was helpful to her raising money for her first faceplant in 2007 and 2008, trying to be president of the United States.
Oh, I thought you meant on September 11th.
No, this was predated September 11th.
But that was the actual faceplant.
Yeah, this is like... And then, so you think about what it's like. You're sitting there, a young guy, and you have the modern equivalent of a Rolodex, a list of all these people who've been donating to Clinton charities and campaigns for long periods of time, and you've probably got your VIP list of the big, reliable donors, and you entrust that to this guy, Dennis Cheng. Mm-hmm. And then you put this Dennis Cheng guy in as the deputy head of protocol in the Secretary of State's department, where there's no Inspector General overseeing the Secretary of State or the Department of State, while Hillary's Secretary of State. There's secret servers and unsecure electronic devices being used by multiple people. And this guy's at the fulcrum of deciding, he's actually the person who helps decide, who gets to sit next to Barack Obama and Michelle at the state dinner, and people who want to travel internationally with Hillary Clinton on the plane. He decides who goes on the plane. People coming from foreign countries, and he gets all of these personal details concerning, the premier of China's handler, what's his email address or her email address and phone number and cell phone. This is very valuable information.
Easy to save, too.
Easy to save, easy to walk out the door with it.
Send someone.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is stuff that's, puts you in the power alley around the world. You know every world leader, all this kind of stuff. You're trying to put deals together. You're trying to get approvals for your donors to do projects around the world. This is remarkable information. So what happens? The guy gets that job in sometime after January 20th, 2009, and he exits in July of 2011, and he promptly goes to work in a secret office. Tom Fitton, are you listening? A secret office that you and I both...
77
Water Street, unregistered in New York State, as is required under New York law. He's working down there. No one knows exactly what he's doing, who else is with him, where money's getting wired around, and he gets the job of raising money for, quote, an endowment for the Clinton Foundation. Now, we haven't drilled down on this yet, and today's show will not do that in depth, but you and I can't create the Goodman Podcast Foundation, right? And then say, it's expensive in New York, why don't we raise an endowment? And then have that $250 million go into your foundation, and then use the income to fly around the world and chase women and have fun and fight climate change and do this and do that. You're just not allowed to do that. And the rules on the use of how you invest in an endowment, and it has to be diversified, it has to be very prudent, and how you are careful not to mix the use. You can't temporarily use stuff in the endowment because you've got a shortfall in your operating budget. Do that back and forth. You're losing money in your Boston office, but you've got this endowment slush fund over here. You can't cover off those losses. And there are all these records that are in the public domain. And so the fact that Tom Fitton and the piranha fish over at Judicial Watch have actually filed a lawsuit here is extremely helpful, especially if they can't stay just at the federal level. They also have to look at state infractions, because the other thing that people check very carefully normally in the States is if you go out and you say, hey, I've got a fundraising campaign here in New York, and you don't explain that you've got one effort for your endowment and another effort for your operating expenses, and you mix and match and you maybe do the same thing in Michigan. You raise money for the endowment in Michigan, but use it for operating expenses in Massachusetts. That's all count after count after count of, federal crimes, state crimes, and this is very, very dangerous ground if they push on it as hard as I hope they will push.
If Judicial Watch pushes.
Well, and then they're trying to instigate criminal investigations, which I believe are already in process.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly warranted. Maybe they're using that endowment. I mean, I've heard the VIP room at the Arkansas Spearmint Rhino can really run up the bill.
That's right. Your bottle service.
Right.
So turning then to, just to give a little bit more context about this French prosecutor here. This is an article in French, but it basically says, my schoolboy French, it basically says that this lady, Eliane Houlette, is the most powerful woman in France. And when you look, if you Google on this name, and you grow to appreciate that her investigation into financial, we don't have a prosecutor like this in the United States. This is a permanent special prosecutor with a massive staff.
Wow.
Whose job is to investigate financial improprieties and public corruption, particularly complex frauds with an international dimension. So I mean, this is not like some Bob Mueller time-lapse thing that's got to be over. This is an institution. This lady, there was a man called, I think, Francois Fillon, was supposed to be the president of France, but this person commenced an investigation in the middle of that campaign, and as a result, he dropped out.
Wow.
This person went after Google France for a year in secret and then burst in and is going after them for breaking all kinds of French laws of using information improperly.
Wow.
This person just had, I believe, Nicolas Sarkozy arrested.
Right.
And this is a person who might know quite a lot about complex financial crimes and who might be following in her office with the head of the French National Police this very broadcast.
Wow.
And this person may also be studying, it's in the press, issues surrounding uranium and the global attempt to rig the uranium market. And there's a big French company that went bankrupt with problems with uranium. So this is a powerful person,
yeah,
and a powerful adversary. I have experience in just business, thankfully, law in France, but I can tell you, the last thing you want to do as an American person or as an accounting firm or as a deep-pocketed trustee is get on the wrong side of somebody like this.
Yeah.
Because if they want to drill you put a new baguette up your spine, they're going to do it.
Wow.
And you're just going to beg for mercy by the time they get done with you. And this is just one of the people around the world watching this carefully. I would implore you people in the United Kingdom and government who may be watching this to take this very seriously, because the kind of questions this person is going to ask, there are heavy connections between France and the UK, as we're going to get into with Unitate. Heavy connections. There are a lot of emails that went back and forth that were not destroyed in bleach bin, whatever, that will surface because the government of France most likely has them, the government of the UK has them.
Right.
So if we go
and
back,
certain private corporations like GE and Boeing, as
right.
Jan has pointed out.
Right. So the other thing is, the other strand that's winding in here, we're not going to focus today on Ranbaxy and the Indian problems, but there's something going on in India that bears watching as well, and that is that Prime Minister Modi, who I think is up for re-election, is doing what he can to try to cleanse the Indian propensity for frauds, big-time frauds. And when you go down that track, the good thing about having an unequal distribution of wealth is it's a very short list of people to go after for fraud. You just start at the top and you say, okay, that old family, good name, unlikely. This one, new fortune, fraud. And we'll go into it. So here's a story in here. This is in Bloomberg, and actually they do very good work. There's a new banking fraud that's spreading. An investigation into this bank in, I think, Hyderabad, which is, some say, one of the fraud capitals of India. But this fraud, this PNB fraud, is likely, I mean, it's small beer for the Clintons. It's only $2 billion.
You don't have time for that.
But, there's a lot There's a real ratcheting up now in India. They realize, I believe, that in order to be taken seriously as a country, they've got to move to a higher level of strictness on reporting, financial reporting, and lending, and stamping out fraud. And at the root of the Clinton Foundation fraud, as we'll get into, we know, as Fabian demonstrated in previous broadcasts where the details are there, we know that approximately 90% of all of the drugs that in theory were purchased by Unitaid, by the Clinton Foundation on behalf of Unitaid, were from generic manufacturers, 3 of them in India and 1 in South Africa, with the most important one likely being Ranbaxy in India. And we will get into this in great depth in another broadcast because there's been developments since the last time we brought this up.
Really?
Yeah. But the net on the Ranbaxy crimes is very significant because it's my contention that the United States government slow-walked the ultimate denouement of that fraud investigation to ensure that it did not appear prior to the November 2012 election. Had the American voter known the extent of the corruption at the Clinton Foundation prior to November 2012, Mitt Romney would have been President of the United States.
Wow.
And
who was slow walking that? Was it Mueller?
I would guess Mueller was in there as FBI director, but it was in the hands of the Justice Department, so it would be that famous paragon of virtue, the contemptible Eric Holder as Attorney General.
Eric Holder,
I mean, he of Fast and Furious fame, he who is, what did he say? I wear my contempt citation from Congress as a badge of honor. Talk about a nitwit.
Dope. He's always tweeting something stupid.
Right. What's the thing he said? The Sean Connery thing.
I don't know.
He said, "You don't bring a knife to a gunfight."
Did Eric Holder say that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's an idiot.
He's got to go away.
Yeah. Something about California. So we do. I suppose I said we weren't going to talk about the omnibus stuff, but if we hit this Hill story, second from the bottom, not that one.
No. This one.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of sort of drive-by reporting on what may have happened. We have an acquaintance of mine, Ann Coulter, and somebody I've not met, Matt Drudge, seriously upset with Trump.
Yeah, she said he's going to get him impeached. I saw a tweet from Ann Coulter.
Well, under a theory that this bill is so much against what the base wants. But I've heard other reporting, which is a lot more sensible, and that is that this is not a budget. This is an omnibus spending bill, which gives now the president authority to spend money. Doesn't mean he has to spend the money. So he could turn around and say, yeah, it says in here I could spend for Planned Parenthood and these other things. We're just not going to do that.
Right.
What we are going to do is we're going to use the Army Corps of Engineers to get that wall up faster than you thought.
I heard that from Dr. Corsi this morning. That was pretty interesting. And he also tied it to a QAnon post, Red Castle, Green Castle. I didn't know this. The logo for the Army Corps of Engineers is a red castle. So I have to say, Dr. Corsi, I'm getting it. Right. I'm getting it. Yeah. The decoding. Dr. Corsi is brilliant.
Right, he is. Yeah. So as a guess, I think on this one that Trump may well and his team may have outplayed the demon rat-in-chief, Chuck Schumer, and his allies in the Uniparty. So if we go back to one more slide, then we're going to get into the meat of this. I've been doing a series about how governments, foreign and state governments, are a lot more serious. It's the bottom link here.
Yep.
You had it up there. Yeah, not that one. There. This one.
It's hard for me to see the.
Yeah.
There we go.
So in this coming week, there will be some details, more details about how state governments, and perhaps we'll see about developments, how foreign governments are moving ever more swiftly and powerfully and aggressively against this Clinton Foundation, because the filings that they rushed in 2017 concerning 2016 are egregiously false and misleading.
Materially misleading.
Well, I mean, when you for the main foundation, if you basically, the largest piece of it was this Clinton Health Access thing, which they controlled, and another important piece was the Clinton Global Initiative, and you shut those, you surrender your control over the Clinton
Grifters Initiative?
No, that you shut down, but the Clinton Health Initiative, you surrender the control for apparently no consideration, which is a strange decision. Who gives up majority control of something to get nothing back at all? You know, is very strange, and the accounting report on that was done by a firm that's very questionable called Cohn-Resnick. Fortunately for people interested in going after the fraudsters, there's another deep pocket to go after. So in coming weeks, we face a deadline of May 15th, 2018 to seek extensions on federal and state tax returns. And when you do that, if you have a material adverse change in your operation, you've got to tell the tax authorities before you ask for a tax extension in certain places. So there's going to be a lot of drama week by week as these different state and federal and foreign governments press on here. So, you know, please assume that there's a lot in the works here. So we go to the next. Okay. We're now on the subject. The bulk of this presentation is going to be about the UK government. You know, what has the UK government been doing here to police these Clinton Foundation frauds? Now, by way of background, the UK government, we owe our birth as a country to toxic relations with the UK government. And they've been around the world a lot longer than we have. And their spy services and their relations around the world with many, many countries, you know, are not built on, you know, the fact that people went together to the same college, but in many cases it can be that a given family has been operating in country A or country B in Africa or Asia or whatever. So they have these deep roots around the world. They have an ability to think through, you know, their foreign policy. They, of course, having operated the Commonwealth, and controlling at one point, you know, most of the surface of the earth. You know, they feel they know something about international work. They also have ancient universities. They have very competent accountants and forensic accountants and lawyers and investigators and health experts who think that their levels of skill and analysis are far higher than the United States. So, you know, though it's a smaller country, and I think they fairly can say that many of their sleuths are really super smart. The big question for you in the UK government and for you journalists who know me and know Jason now and know that we're bird-dogging this, and we warned you that a heaping pile of bad stuff of odor is going to come out of France. We're warning you on that. You know, how could you people in the UK have not studied these crucial periods from when the foundation was organized, October 23rd, 1997, through the day before this Clinton Foundation HIV initiative was established? How could you not have studied the records that are in the public domain? How could you not have realized that this thing was a complete fraud in that period, never had audits that were required, never did any of the paperwork that was required properly, had all kinds of defects in filing inside the United States and operating outside the United States? How could you not have seen that? You know, and then how could you not track closely all the work that's been done between March 24th, 2004 and December 31st, 2005, when this Clinton Foundation, so we call it Old Chai, was set up? You know, how could you not have seen that there were major league issues, missing reports, missing legal documents, that this thing couldn't possibly have been a real charity? How could you have missed that? And then from this period, January 1st, 2006 through the 14th of March 2010, when there was no legal entity with authority to do any of this HIV/AIDS work around the world, and yet when this Clinton Foundation got over $300 million, maybe much more than that, from sophisticated donors, the bulk of which came, or a big slug of which came, from the UK government. How could you have missed all that? How could you have missed the illegal filings that gave rise under Lois Lerner to this supposed new Chai from March 15, 2010 to the present? You're smart people over in the UK. So the question before us now is, you know, what does that file look like in the various government entities that routed monies to Clinton Foundation projects, to the Clinton Foundation itself, to Unitate in this long period? How many emails are out there? How many people have these emails? How many people may have cracked inside the the UK government files from abroad?
Hacked them?
Hack, crack, whatever, have gotten these emails. And how much of a file is there here? Then on the question, as we'll show you momentarily, the UK government has allowed almost $500 million to go into Unitaid, which is completely, broken its charter, as we're going to show you. It should be wound down, frankly.
Unitaid.
Sure. I mean, by the time Unitaid was created in 2006, in that book we've had up many times, Power in Numbers, explains the birth of Unitaid, explains the intertwined nature, that the reason the English backed Unitaid is they convinced the French that a slug of the money raised in Unitaid would go back to this innovative finance mechanism that raised billions of pounds on the capital markets for charity projects. There's got to be an enormous record of back and forth and horse trading between the English and the French of how that deal came together. Why would you support this type of activity when beginning in 2003 and 4, the US government, and indeed I think the UK government, was supporting this global fund, which was giving tens of billions of dollars, almost I think more than 30 billion or more, has gone into this very same countries, in many cases, that Unitaid has been attacking. Vastly bigger sums were already going into these countries from another pocket. Why would you support Unitaid? Why would you not do any of this due diligence?
I feel like sometimes you ask these questions, but you actually already know the answer.
That's possible.
Why? How could they?
Well, I think what Bill Clinton was able to figure out is that there's this thing called the...
You mean aside from how to take a bra off with one hand?
Exactly, right, while smoking a cigar. I think what he figured out, really the hard way, is that the best way to pad your nest as you're leaving highest office in a country is you set up a foundation.
Right.
So he created, this approach. He's involved with this thing called the Club de Madrid, which is an association, it's a small foundation, but it's an association to assist former leaders, world leaders and significant celebrity types, to do worthy projects around the world. So via that and his Rolodex, he was able to say, hey, Tony Blair, you're going to leave in 2007. Do you have a foundation yet? So
it's almost like a franchise he's selling. It's like a criminal foundation franchise.
It's like Fraudsters Are Us.
McFraud.
That's right. The drive-through project, the drive-through window at McFraud. So, if we could just stay on that page quickly, the first question is, there's a record of why the UK government advanced so much money to Unitaid, but in addition, we're going to show you that the UK government made substantial, over $100 million of direct grants to Clinton Foundation projects that were organized in part by this illegally formed Clinton Health Access Initiative, which did not get its federal tax exemption under fair principles and under fair disclosures.
They lied.
Yeah.
How does a grant differ from a donation?
Well, technically a grant is a term of art. That's when a government or a private foundation makes a specific donation to you, either for your general purposes or for a specific project. And a donation tends to refer more than often than not just Charles Ortel giving him $25 or a bunch of people.
Got it.
But the English is not all that precise as a language sometimes, so donation, contribution, and grant are all used interchangeably, whereas they're not necessarily, when you get into technical issues, the same.
Got it.
We talked at length, we had a special presentation involving the Vienna Ball about how charity gala events and fundraising dinners, they sound great, especially when you're rising, you're coming along in life and you're trying to, get a promotion and your boss's wife sends you an invitation, do you want to spend $1,000 to have a table at my charity?
Models are going to be there.
Well, that's probably the boss's wife wouldn't be saying that. That would be Clinton himself would be saying that.
But I think people who go to those things know it's a swanky party. Everybody's dressed up. It's networking,
right.
Food, drinks, all that.
Right. And that, you see, under our law, you're not supposed to get a benefit out of a charity. And a benefit doesn't simply mean money. It means any kind of edge, competitive advantage. You're not supposed to do that. So
people do those charity dinners all the time. That's not allowed?
Technically speaking, the question is, what is the cumulative amount of that private gain you know, the edge, the advantage, the promotion, the whatever, the business deal that you concoct because you sat next to somebody at a charity. What is the magnitude of those gains, cumulative gains, in comparison to the authorized tax-exempt purpose of the charity? And if the magnitude of that cumulative gain over the life of the charity is, quote, more than insubstantial, meaning in court cases more than $1,000, you're in deep trouble if the IRS chooses to do anything about it. But of course we had, you know, I look the other way, I only persecute Republicans, Lois Lerner, in that box. We don't know who currently is in that box running tax exempt, and deep on the bench in the tax exempt organization. I'm guessing that Donald Trump has not yet been able to strip that cancer, you know, strip those turds out of the tax exempt department and wash it clean the way it needs to be washed clean. But so who's checking in the UK? I mean, London is a very expensive, lovely place.
Yeah.
They know how to do a party. They, you know, do parties very well. And you know, who's really checking when the Clintons swan into town to do, you know, a charity, as they are doing in London from time to time, and they supposedly raise, you know, $10 million or whatever they raise. Who checks to make sure that, you know, every pound that is collected in the name of the charity actually goes to the charity? Because that's the first way in which you can skim money.
Wow.
You know, you sell tickets, but you don't give the proceeds into the charity.
Right.
And then who checks to make sure that, you know, when you're saying that the party cost $8 million, did it really cost $8 million? Or did you give your mistress the catering contract and your, you know, some other friend the entertainment budget? You know,
$100,000 for $50,000 worth of catering, and somebody gets to keep that. I mean, I've been to some of those charity things, and they have these silent auctions, so there could be any amount of money raised, but 10 million from one sounds like a lot.
Well, not if you're living large like the Clintons. I mean, you know, I don't know that they'd raise right now. You know, if the What Happened and She Persisted duo, you know, got together and say, hey, let's do a charity in London, they might have trouble raising $100,000. But you know, there are always people out there. So long as you believe that the Clintons have some realistic hope of being able to pull or push levers of power for or against you, some people will pay them money.
Maybe if they had one of those things where you can throw a baseball at it and dunk Hillary, you could
awesome.
raise a lot of money with that.
Be awesome. So the other thing is, it's a common problem, not just to pick on you in the UK, but we don't yet have an ability in the major economies of the world so far. The charity regulators typically do not have the resources to really police a UK charity that says it's doing work internationally. After all, you know, if you're a small charity, let's say you've got £1 million a year and you want to do work in Zimbabwe, I mean, is it really worth the effort of the charity regulator there and wherever it is in London somewhere to actually fly to Zimbabwe and Zambia or wherever and check and make sure you're doing any of this work? But comes a size, when you're the size of the Clinton Foundation, declared total revenues of $2 billion, it would seem to me that you might want to check some of that, particularly if you discovered that they were doing a lot of work in the most corrupt countries on earth where it's very easy to skim money.
Yeah.
So now the other thing that's particularly and poignantly important for the Clinton Foundation, I would have thought that particularly a country like the UK, which has a medical establishment that does invent life-saving drugs, that has a big pharmaceutical set of businesses, it has a hoary reputation, spelled H-O-A-R-Y, for you know, doing lots of great inventions and revolutionizations in the healthcare field. I would have thought that one of the things you really did not want to do as the UK government was to put money in a charity, lend your stamp of approval on a charity that then, you know, would go around the world and maybe on purpose or maybe just by sloppiness would miss the fact that they were distributing adulterated medicines to the poorest people in the world, likely killing people. I would have thought that's not something you want to brag about as the UK government.
No.
And so the question is it just the tax authorities that should be looking at the Clinton Foundation and Ron Boxey, which by the way had operations, I think, in Ireland and the United Kingdom? Is it just the charity and tax people and Parliament? Or should it be the medical people also looking at this to see how the Clinton Foundation may have gamed the system in the UK? So,
people in the comments like the idea of the dunk Hillary.
Yeah, I think, and we could have all sorts of suggestions as to what she should be dunked into. But so the other question is, we've had our friend Judge Napolitano, who's a good man, got in some trouble in, I want to say 2016, it might have been 17, suggesting that there may have been this informal arrangement. Of course, it wouldn't be an MOU or even a contract. It would just be an understanding that you're the UK spy people, I'm the American spy people. I can't spy an American citizen, so I call you up. I say, hey there,
What's this guy up to?
Yeah, what's he up to?
Yeah.
And that there might have been an informal sharing arrangement like that.
Did Judge Knapp get in trouble for talking about that? Isn't it known, the Five Eyes? I mean,
No, he
they've
got-
got Harmon on lockdown in New Zealand.
He got pulled off the air for a few days because he intimated that that was really what was behind the unmasking. And remember Shep Smith
Yep.
said he was absolutely wrong, and he had triple sourced the story and he knew he was right, but Shep Smith called him out and Brett Baer made a retraction. Knapp said it in the morning. By 4 o'clock or so, Shep Smith, was saying that this does not fall into our high standards of the Fox News, Shep Smith analytical. I mean, Shep Smith needs to go back to wherever he's from.
Yeah. Or at least get off the television.
Exactly. But so the question I would be having here, and I'd be wondering about is, it's not the case in England that everybody loves the Clintons, but it is the case in England that there's one hell of a lot of electronic evidence that is likely vacuumed up in England. So that
GCHQ.
I didn't say that, but but if you think that you're merrily, busily there in Chappaqua, that the servers are protected because you've got Secret Service people who will make sure that they won't get hacked, you might be stupid enough to believe that just because you bleach bit a device in the U.S., that all records of your communications have been, disappeared in the UK, or in these many countries where you're traveling, your frequent flyer miles, Secretary of State jet, all these countries that have very lax security, you're sending emails back and forth. You don't think any of that was scooped up?
Well, also the other person who you were emailing with has a copy of it. So,
Right.
But it does become more. I mean, they basically had it all there in the one bathroom server that got bleach bitted.
So the other thing is, and it's too much to do in one broadcast, but I will just say as a bit of a news flash here, for 3 years I have been vacuuming the available email records, internet records, looking on various ways at what you can find is in the public domain concerning how various governments have supported the Clinton Foundation in different ways. And unfortunately for the Clintons, there is this thing called, there are these masters of public health programs, and there's this approach that they take. Rather than having one person write a paper, 10 people will join in writing the paper, and they'll all write these 6-page papers with all these footnotes, and they'll develop these 100-page resumes. So there's just voluminous amounts of these academic and supposedly peer-reviewed documents which document exactly what the Clinton Foundation was doing when it had no legal authority to do any of this work from 2002 through 2009.
What do you mean? Is it like outraged doctors or something who
No,
are
it's
writing that?
it's the opposite. It's starry-eyed doctors, and now the president of Vassar is one example who wrote a paper about this. You Ira Magazine or Bill Clinton or somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, you're a professor at Yale. Would you like to help Ethiopia come into the 21st century and work with us as the exclusive academic partner on, a plan to scale up and modernize what's going on in Ethiopia?" This is a true story. And by the way, we've got a donor who's going to give us $20 million for this, and so there's money for your university, there's stature, blah, blah. So you write these articles in peer-reviewed journals because you're a professor at a big school like Yale, talking about how working with this minister over here who's got some unpronounceable name, you took some district in Ethiopia that had one bed for 10 million people, and now it's got 10,000 beds or whatever the math is, and here's the trajectory on, the downward trajectory on illness problems, and the upward trajectory on the quality of the water, and blah, blah, blah. It's all this technical stuff. But the problem is, with this writing, either the writing is fiction, or which is a problem for the academic, or it's true, and it's a major league problem for the Clinton Foundation, which claimed that it wasn't doing any of this when it sought its tax exemption on December 31st, 2009. So it's a massive trap.
If they weren't doing it, how did they get all those articles? Obviously they were.
somebody should write a book.
What happened, right?
We could go then to the next page. All right. We're not going to spend a lot of time on these numbers. As usual, what I like to do is focus on the red numbers, not the black numbers. Got nothing against black numbers. But this is sourced from Fabian's work. And we give you the links below of how much money Unitate collected in total, $2.7 billion. How much did the UK provide to it? Almost 500 million. What percent is that? 19%. How much of that money went to Chai? 600 million went to Chai, right?
Wow.
And so if you say that the proportionate share, the proportion that the UK put into the donations is their proportionate share of what they sent to Chai. The UK, the people traveling through the UK, sent Chai $109 million.
So they did that micro tax as well on plane tickets?
I forget how the UK did it. They might have actually made an actual contribution. I forget exactly the way they did it. But so this is important to look at. We do it year by year. People say, well, there are no facts, Charles. There are no details here. I mean, the point is there are a lot of facts. And we did not in this presentation explain the many wires that were sent by Unitate to Chai. We have the dates of those wires, investigators. Are you listening up? The dates of those wires.
For these
which
right
means
here.
To Chai, the $600 million worth. We have the dates of those wires for 2007 to 2009, when in not one of those years was Chai authorized for any of these activities. We have every date. We have every purpose. We have in theory, where Chai sent the money afterwards, which we're going to get into that. That's very suspicious as well. We also have the reports that Chai made up to Unitate. So in asking that question about who did the diligence, you have a wire transfer trail, you have the dates of the reports that were sent from Chai up to Unitate. You therefore have a rich record that investigators were going over starting December 9th, 2009, but missed in their report November 30th, 2011, before Nicolas Sarkozy was going to run for re-election in 2012. The French government was down a track of looking at this, and then they said, wait a minute, we're not going to do that before the election, which Nicolas Sarkozy ultimately lost. So Eliane Houlette and her team, certainly want to think about the Clinton Foundation in this context. Why would the French be hot and bothered to get to the bottom of this fraud? And then someone says, well, I don't think we're going to look at that. And that someone, Nicolas Sarkozy, hot and heavy with Hillary Clinton in Libya.
He stopped it?
Well, as a guess.
Wow.
As a guess.
So that all ties back to Benghazi if he's...
Exactly. And this is what Eliane Houlette is looking at as well. So the suspicion of her main charges are that the Muammar Gaddafi government illegally provided 50 million euros to Sarkozy when he was only allowed, I think, for the presidential campaign to spend 21 million total. 50 million is bigger than 21 million, I know. and that's just a portion of it. And what were, remember that kinetic military counter or whatever it was? It was kinetic military adventure or whatever they called it to get around the War Powers Act in this country, the Libya thing. So this is a period in here not only where there was economic mayhem going on, but also where the U.S. government, as Jan Weinberg is excellent at pointing out in great depth, sourced research, the U.S. government was trying to sell military equipment around the world.
Yeah.
The French government was trying to sell military equipment.
Sorry to interject, but Hillary Clinton's State Department was intervening on behalf of major military industrial contractors like Boeing and General Electric to facilitate those sales.
Right, and so this is all part of a big swamp here that you got the French looking at it. I hope the English will start to look at it, because if they don't, we're going to embarrass the living hell out of you. And the U.S. is certainly looking at it. And here we have the biggest significance on this page is that in this period here, 2007 and 2009, there was no such thing as a legal matter. There was no such thing as a Chai. It did not legally exist It had been liquidated effective December 31st, 2005. The Clintons and a cabal of accountants and lawyers inside and outside this country sold the fiction to the UK government, to the French government, to Unitate, to many, many donors, that it had the legal authority to actually fight HIV/AIDS around the world when it had no such authority. And they clipped the UK for $34 million in this period where they had no authority. Then, rather than admit that they had a problem, they said, what we'll do is we'll illegally create a new entity, and they clipped the Brits for another $75 million from 2010 to 2016 via Unitate. And this is all documented. There's an amazing amount of information that is out there that you can see. This is the Clinton Foundation engaging in deceptive practices, which are covered under U.S. and other laws, in addition to the problems in charity land and tax land. You cannot engage in deceptive practices, clipping the UK government of more than $100 million because you said you were going to do something that you actually can't do. The damages are proven. The UK government sent this money. That's a matter, unless the Unitate financial statements are all frauds, which I don't think they are.
Do you expect we might find out what difference at this point it makes?
No, I think, somebody was, one of those Page 6 gossip people or somebody else was tweeting. No, it was the shirtless pundit guy.
Oh, Zach, yeah.
Zach, he's a good guy.
Zach Kohler.
And he tweeted out, apparently people around Hillary are complaining that she's even more of a belligerent drunk than she used to be. She's driving her retinue crazy. But no, there's a record here. This isn't like, campaign promises where you go out on stage and you say, hope, change, and people clap, and this is like a record.
Anything and you destroy all hope.
Right. I mean, there's a record here.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, it's always amazing to me when people say, oh, Charles, it's like there's no evidence, whatever. What I think about every time you talk about this is that scene in Godfather 2, I think, where he's like helping old ladies and stuff. So they make this fraud about helping people with AIDS because if you speak out against it, well, then you're, racist because they're helping Africa, or you're homophobic because they're helping AIDS, or how could you fight against someone who's trying to help people? But that's just it. That's their MO, to shroud it in something benevolent.
Well, when you go way back into modern history, what passes for history after 0 AD, what happened in the very early period, like 400 and after AD, is that kings and wealthy people, as they got older, they would say, you know what, all right, I've lived, whatever it is, 50 years, chances are I don't have that many left. I might have done a few bad things, but I have this country over here I didn't have before I started, so why don't I give it away, or give it to a charity or whatever, and I'll get on the right side of God. I mean, it's not a new story that people would do, particularly people who had maybe done the most egregious of things early in their careers, that later in their careers they'd say, maybe I better hedge my bets a little bit, So this kind of behavior is not unusual. Now, what I want to go through here very quickly is these are, according to Clinton, most of these numbers are not available on versions of the Clinton Foundation filings, which are on their website. Okay, these numbers are obtained in part from Unitate, cross-checking Unitate, the largest individual donor to the Clinton Foundation, with hidden financial information that we will show you how to get a few pages later, that is available on the New York State and California charity websites, that shows exactly how much money CHI, the entity that legally didn't exist, how much that entity claimed it received in grants, and how much money the whole combined Clinton Foundation claimed that it got in grants to New York and California state authorities, and maybe to some other states. So let me walk through these numbers very quickly. Unitate's numbers, they claim they gave, in this time frame, not the whole period through 2016, that they gave $297 million to the Clinton Foundation, right?
Right here.
That money was supposed to be spent primarily for drugs. Only a small piece of it was supposed to be spent for administrative overhead. The whole idea of Unitate was that they were to invest in new established charities that had their overheads covered so that the incremental money going from Unitaid to those charities would basically go almost entirely to the intended purpose. That it
The
would,
charitable need.
yeah, the overhead is already covered. This is just going to the charitable need. So this shows that if you believe these figures, that particularly in this crucial period, and what was happening, Jason, I'll give you a little chance to think about it. 2007 and 2008, what was happening on the political scene involving Hillary Clinton in 2007 and 2008?
Running for president against Obama.
Right. So in this crucial period, Unitaid sends $212 million to the Clinton Foundation, but only $107 million are in theory spent on drugs, if they really were spent on drugs. Meaning that the overhead was 49%.
Wow.
In these crucial years when the $100 million could come in handy if you were trying to pay political consultants and travel expenses and this and that.
That's the bigger number, 49%, okay, but $100 million to run a charity? Like what?
$100 million.
What are they?
I can't do that, whatever it is.
That's a ton of money. How many people would you say would be employed to operate a charity of this size? Do we know how many employees the Cheaton Foundation employs?
Well, yeah, they do. They do put out various estimates of how many employees they have, but you don't, until the FBI checks
$100 million
it.
in expenses in a year for a business, Charles. That's massive. I mean,
It shouldn't be there. Especially remembering that this charity, they clearly weren't spending it on decent lawyers, because this charity was only supposed to operate a facility in Little Rock to house the presidential records of the Clinton Foundation and do research into the Clinton presidency. That's all it was supposed to do. So, they'd already given that facility to the National Archives 18 November 2004. Why in 2007 and 8 do you feel the need to spend $100 million on any? It only cost $165 million in theory to build this thing. I think it's more like 100 or maybe even 85. To spend $100 million in a year on this type of charity is absurd. But it gets worse than that. But wait, it gets worse than that.
There's more.
Yeah. So Unitaid says in 2007, we gave you $71.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
In the Clinton Foundation books, they claim that they only received $43.7 million.
Where's the rest?
And for all grants, and now mind you, in 2007, Australia's giving him money. Many other countries are giving him money. The Gates Foundation is giving him money. The Children's Aid Financial, all these people are giving money. And the biggest donor says that it gave more money than you in total received. That's, you don't need to do any more work. You just sit down with Unitaid and you say, can you show us, verify the wiring instructions, to what bank accounts did you send this money? On what date? What did the reports say that you got before you wired the money? Who did diligence at Unitaid? Who from the Clinton Foundation was sending you this information? Then you get that bank account, incoming bank account, and you say, well, where'd that money go? And
that fake BOA down the street.
Right, exactly, we've been there. So this is something we didn't do. I wanted to make it simple for the investigators in the UK and France and elsewhere. Unitaid, this is executive board meetings. Fabian on previous slides has given you the exact website. You could just Google Unitaid Executive Board Meeting and you'll get to the archive. If we look at the first meeting that occurred on the 9th and 10th of October 2006, read up on resolution 5 and 8. The one in the second meeting in late November 2006, after Hillary had won re-election, but before she announced her Senate, but before she announced her abortive, I should say, presidential ambition tour in January 20th, 2007.
Abhorrent.
Look at, what?
Her abhorrent.
Abhorrent, exactly. Resolutions 8 and 11, lay down the markers that the executive board of Unitaid told fellow members. We'll give this money to the Clinton Foundation, but they've got to comply. They've got to have legal agreements in place that show that it's operating lawfully in every country in the world where they're supposedly going to do this work for us. So resolutions 8 and 11 detail that, and I won't repeat all this. There's a lot of resolutions out there. You can get them. All the stuff is publicly available. And then you put together this comprehensive timeline, and with all this work, all these fancy meetings in Geneva, and I'm sure technical reports, accounting, consulting, all this, nobody bothered to ask, does the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative actually exist as a legal matter?
I mean, as an initial thing, it's just, to have a former president of the United States approach you about a charitable endeavor, I don't think most people's first thoughts would be, well, this is probably fake, right?
Well, that's maybe that should change, right?
It should change.
That should change. Maybe, and especially for now, when a politician from a dynastic political family asks you to give money to a charity, you should probably assume it's a fake. You say, can you speak into this microphone over here? Yeah. Anyway, so we go to the next page. All right. We've been over this a little bit before, and it's a lot to go through, and I'm going to keep this to 2 hours or so. So I'm not going to go through every one of these things. But the first one, we talk here about how the thing was set up, and then how the IRS application happened, how the conditional approval occurred. Then on item 4, Bruce Lindsay, as near as I can tell, was at best an agent of the Clinton Foundation as a lawyer. I don't think he was an officer. It doesn't say in the tax forms he was an officer or a director in 2004. And this is 7 days before hapless Andrew Kessel signs on as chief financial officer of the Clinton Foundation. Bruce Lindsay illegally creates this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative under his signature.
Is that the fake signature, the real one?
It looks like the original real one, not the later fake one. And it's very important to remember here. When I was fortunately trained by this great guy, I'll even say his name, Price Blackford, who is a great guy, very clever banker, very detail-oriented. And I remember him asking me, we told this story before, he drops this gigantic document on my desk, this annual report for a financial company. He says, can you check it? I'm like, check it? How am I going to check a 300-page document issued by CIT Financial? And I found 3 mistakes in it. But so when you get really precise, you got to look carefully at the name of the charity. The name of the charity, the actual name, the legal name, is the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. Now, Lindsay was careful to use that name. Kessel is a bonehead. He was not, he doesn't, names or laws, it doesn't matter. So,
is a fraud any less stenchy by any other name, Charles?
That's right. So Bruce Lindsay, by creating this subsidiary, guts, I would argue, the legal status of the Clinton Foundation by that act, because it had no authority. He created this thing, this subsidiary,
violating the
but he didn't first amend the Articles of Incorporation of the parent, which he would have had to do to make it valid. Didn't do that, as far as we can tell. Then at sometime in April, there are different reports. One is 21st of April, another is 29th of April 2004. We're not sure yet which. Old Chai, this entity, may have actually attempted to become a federally tax-exempt entity. We have evidence that they filed 990s, annual tax returns to the feds, for 2004 and 2005, for 2005 and 2006. Of course, those 990s, which you put up on the site, are not on the Clinton Foundation website anywhere. They try to hide them, but they definitely created this thing, and it definitely solicited money, and it doesn't seem to have gotten any state filings made, maybe even in Arkansas, where it was critical to have a state filing for this entity.
You got it from the Bureau of Charities website?
In Massachusetts, we got one of them, and then our good friend Michael Smith found the other one.
Ah, yes.
So in Arkansas, and again, I'm not practicing law, I'm not a lawyer, but in Arkansas, there is a business corporation law which allows you to do, and you know about this from your own business, doing business as names, and also known as names. You can do that in a business, but it's much more tricky to do it for charity, because in a charity, if you hold yourself out as being able to do something that you're not allowed to do, that's fraud.
Yeah, but even when you do it for a business, I had to file a thing with New York State. The bank wouldn't give me a bank account for the new business name until I had all that documentation.
Right. Now, Arkansas is different. So, but the hapless Andrew Kessel thought he was being really clever. And here, I just warn the Clinton Foundation people and implore the FBI, you can, if you're in the Little Rock office, just get into an Uber or whatever and go right down to the Secretary of State's office, and get the file on all these Clinton foundations. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Why don't we go there and do that?
I'm not going to Arkansas.
That's a good idea, actually.
To not go?
To not go.
Yeah.
You get off the plane and
That's
it
right.
would be like,
See ya. But so what Kessel did is, rather than using the form that is required, which is a business corporation law form in Arkansas, he typed up a form.
huh,
And we have a copy of it.
that's creative.
It is creative, where he creates 3 fictitious names on the 5th of October 2004. The William J. Clinton Foundation without the word "the," Clinton Foundation, and the museum store.
That is just absurd.
But each of these forms, you're supposed, as you say, under the law, when you read the statute, it says you've got to explain the character of the business that this fictitious name is going to operate, and he leaves that blank. All right? You
Well, he
can't.
made up the whole form. I mean, this is an adult man doing
It is.
That's
he's
crazy.
he's still the chief financial officer of the Clinton Foundation. He's been the chief financial since April Fool's Day, 2004. In fact, his, whatever it is, 14th anniversary is coming up. You know, maybe they celebrate, you know,
Wow.
Chief Financial Fool Day on April 1st.
That's
but anyway,
amazing.
And the reason he does it this way as a guest is he's trying to, like, you know, live large with the Clintons. I can take care of this. Don't worry, I'll do this. And the Clintons probably tell him, look, you know, in Arkansas, nobody's going to check. and the Secretary of State explicitly is not required to verify this. You're making the representation, and okay, they put it on file. Doesn't mean it's right.
Charles, was it you that told me that like everybody in Arkansas knows and loves Bill Clinton and just thinks he's like a great guy and everything?
I never said that.
Somebody, I think I know who it was that told me that.
No, I think.
He's popular though. People like him there, don't they?
Well, I think it's like anything else. I mean, you know, there's some people like amiable rogues, right? You know, the bad boy, whatever. The people like that. You know, the Elvis Presley type. You know, and there are people who, you know, if you ignore the Juanita Broderick story and the Kathleen Willey story and the Paula Jones story and the Kathy Shelton story, which is going to be very difficult to do tomorrow night because Sean Hannity teased out that there's going to be a special with the 3 ladies, maybe the 4 ladies, revisiting what Bill Clinton did to each of
These
them.
are all rape victims.
Well, I think Juanita was definitely raped. Kathleen was assaulted. Paula Jones was assaulted. And Kathy Shelton was not defended. She was defended by Hillary Clinton.
Oh, right.
So it's slightly different cases, but those are all going to be laid out there by Sean Hannity and the ladies, as they should be. Mm-hmm. But anyway, this act here was and Act 4 gut the legal status of the Clinton Foundation as of the 18th of November 2004. And I hope you're following this, FBI, because the other thing you can do for us, because you're right there, you can go into the Pulaski County court office and the building office, and you can find out the course of progress, what representations were made about the building of this complex, and trace the long history of that. Because I think in doing that, you're gonna, this is a sidebar, you're gonna discover all kinds of construction, bank, and wire fraud, and all the details for it are in Arkansas in those courthouses. So they entered into this illegal agreement where they, under, you know, strict penalties, the president and then of the Clinton Foundation and subsequent second dean of the Clinton School of Public Service swears, yeah, exactly, that the Clinton Foundation is a viably organized and operated public charity, publicly supported charity, which it isn't.
Right.
And that it will follow the purposes of just being a presidential archive and research center in Little Rock, which it wasn't. You know, he signs this fraudulent document. They changed the name officially in the Articles of Incorporation from the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation to simply the William J. Clinton Foundation. They then, by the 31st of December 2005, they learned that they're not going to get federal tax exemption for the old Chi. So their solution is, well, if we don't have it, we'll just merge it in to the parent company and nobody will check, which that's not true. So then hapless Andrew Kessel decides in step 10 on the 3rd of January 2006, he illegally registers the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative.
That's the same guy who's making his own forms?
Yeah, this time he does it this way. He doesn't fill out the character of the business.
Where is this guy? He's in Arkansas?
He's in Arkansas.
I want to interview him.
So here's, yeah, he's going to be probably working at, if he's lucky, at Chipotle or something like that, or maybe.
I was thinking maybe making license plates or pounding rocks.
Yeah. So if we go then, this is where it gets interesting if you UK people, particularly the government regulators. By the 10th of July 2007, in step 11, Bruce Lindsay, Andrew Kessel, and a woman who's somewhat notorious named Diana Noble illegally filed deceptive forms creating the William J. Clinton Foundation UK, and I have the number there of the company number, and give this UK entity powers that it doesn't have. There are all kinds of technical errors, serious technical errors in the way it was established, all kinds of false representations. So it's just like in Arkansas or anywhere else, they have to set up the company and then they have to seek tax exemption in the UK. So they set the company up deceptively on the 10th of July 2007. By the 31st of December 2007, the core piece of the Clinton Foundation that's so sexy, this HIV/AIDS stuff, that was operating in the headquarters in Massachusetts, the authorization involuntarily revoked. That's the effective date on 31 December 2007. That kind of stuff doesn't happen out of the blue. There's a back and forth paper trail, and they must have had notice for that. They must have been aware of the problems. There were pending or threatened negative developments, material adverse change. They don't say anything about it, and they secure on March 12, 2008, UK tax exemption for this fraudulent subsidiary, the William J. Clinton Foundation UK.
But Charles, why are federal authorities in Massachusetts not doing something if they revoked the
state authorities?
Why are state authorities in Massachusetts not doing anything if they revoked their authorization? Why don't they proceed with?
Well, this is a time for the Democratic Party to stand up and be counted. The apparatus, the Attorney General of the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts has been a Democrat for a long time. And, stand up and be counted in Massachusetts. We're going to be putting pressure on you in other shows. Stand up in New York. Stand up in California. You know this is wrong. You know that if Donald Trump did this kind of stuff, long ago he would have been criminally
lambasted.
Right.
So just a quick question. If you do want to commit a crime, you should register as a Democrat? Is that the idea?
I guess. In a democratic
not legal
state.
Advice.
Yeah, that's not legal advice.
An interesting note.
So with all this background here, now bear in mind, we're going to show you what you're supposed to tell people about in your tax forms in a minute here. But with all of this background, the geniuses behind the Clinton Foundation, no reason to think that it would be wise to do all your business as Secretary of State, secret servers, secret devices, alias names, nothing you wanted to hide to make sure that nobody in the State Department knew about these international activities which affected your husband while you were Secretary of State. I mean, you have no motive to do any of this. January 21st, 2009 through February 1, 2013, when you're sitting over the Secretary of State, State Department, no motives at all here. And so the 29th of September 2009, they create this new entity with the same acronym, CHI, illegally, under the supposed control of Bill Clinton, Magaziner, and this newly named the William J. Clinton Foundation. Now at the time, and until this moment, around September 29th, 2009, Bill Clinton formally was never an officer or director, though he was at all times in position to exercise significant influence and control over the Clinton Foundation. So we've talked about this in the past. There's an idea in the law that you can't have shadow directors and shadow executives who, you give somebody else, you give Mother Teresa and, you name whoever it is, Billy Graham and somebody else. You put them as the executives. Meanwhile, Al Capone and John Gotti and others and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton are actually running what is supposed to be a real charity.
But this is another tactic we've seen quite a lot of, co-opting credibility from other people.
Right. Is that called virtue signaling?
I don't know.
Something like that. So December 31st, 2009, there's a material document. The thing that you need to understand with the Clintons, if there's a material document that you need to know, chances are it's not on the Clinton Foundation website. Anything that would put the Clinton Foundation in jeopardy, they hide, which you could do if it's politics, maybe, but you can't do with a publicly supported charity that's continuously soliciting across state lines and national boundaries, using the mail, using the internet, using TV. You can't do this, but they do it. So they filed this application for federal tax exemption on 31st December 2009, and they hide it. Okay, we found it. We're going to show you how you can look for yourselves and see it. And then the genius Lois Lerner grants, even though this application is riddled with disqualifying defects that we're going to take you through in a second, her department gives this new CHI conditional federal tax exemption, and that we're not going to show you now, but the contact person listed on this determination letter, March 15, 2010, is one of the very same people who stands accused of hectoring and some would say unfairly prosecuting and discriminating against Tea Party conservative groups. This is about the same time as the Tea Party persecution starts.
Is that Lois Lerner?
It's a guy with a funny name, I can't remember the name, but it's not Lois Lerner alone, it's underlings in the department. But this is almost to the day exactly when the bright idea of going after people who might prove difficult in the 2010 November elections is hatched. So here you have, we'll let the Clintons and their team skate, but we'll persecute the Tea Party conservatives at the same time. So FBI, DOJ, governments around the world, take notice, okay? Go to the next page.
Charles, we've briefly hit 1,999 viewers watching right now.
Good.
Thank you, everyone.
Good, well, thank you for watching.
And that's just YouTube.
Wow, VK is probably another.
VK's killing it.
Killing it.
2012, Charles.
Very
Anyway,
good.
Sorry.
So, I'm going to take you through, people are fond of saying, oh, Charles, these are just technical problems. It's like traffic tickets. All right.
Oh.
So, here's the form requirements, lifted from the form, and in red, the Clinton approach to each of the requirements.
I like this.
In the first part 4, using an attachment, describe your past, present, and planned activities. What did the Clintons do? No attachment. Don't even fill out anything, right? Nothing, right? Yeah, ordinarily, if you send in your exam and you open up the blue booklet, it used to be blue at Yale anyway, open it up, there's no writing. Chances are you're going to get a 0 when that happens. And it's like, this is the most important thing. What are your activities? Not going to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I'm a Clinton. I don't have to tell you. Right. All right. Then list any alternate names which you operate. Any AKA, also known as any DBA doing business as names. Now, why is this important? Now, I'm going to break some news here. In the 3-year period that I've been looking at this now, I have uncovered many names that are these doing business names that are, many of them operated illegally from the Harlem office, unregistered office of the Clinton Foundation. You've got the Clinton Rwanda project, you've got the Clinton Bahamas project, you've got the Clinton Papua New Guinea. So chances are they have operated in as many as 70 more countries. The number of also known as or doing business as names that the Clinton HIV/AIDS, the Clinton AIDS Consortium, all these names, every single time that you wanted to use such a name for a charity, you had to register it in Arkansas, in every state where you solicited. And you had to make sure that when you raised money first of all, the purposes were authorized, which they weren't, but beyond that, you had to make sure that if you raised money for AIDS, you couldn't take the money that you raised for AIDS and use it for climate change. You can't do that.
Right.
Right. Anyway, so what do? They listed no alternate names. Okay?
Yeah, why get bogged down with that?
Right. So then you say, do you or will you operate in a foreign country or countries? Do you, at the moment, or will you operate in a foreign country or countries? They answer yes. Okay? But if you answer yes, you're supposed to answer lines 12B through 12D. So name the foreign countries and regions within the countries in which you operate. The Clinton Foundation may have operated in 70 foreign countries. They provide no details.
Wow.
Describe your operations in each country and region in which you operate. No details. Describe nothing. Describe, and this is the most important thing, how your operations in each country and region further your exempt purposes. No details provided.
How can they even accept this kind of application for anything?
They can't. So,
but didn't it get accepted?
It was accepted, and here we have, if we just make this a little smaller. So, who is running? I mean, the question should be here, this is a bright line case. This thing should never have been approved. We've been at this now for 3 years. You weren't president in 2015. You weren't president in 2016. We gave you a honeymoon year 2017. Now you're the president. You're past the honeymoon. You've got your team in place, and look what happened recently. Trump's own Department of Justice says, you know what, we're not going to reopen the Lois Lerner case.
Yeah, why? That was
That's
Sessions,
outrageous.
wasn't it? It was Sessions who decided that, right?
I mean, on September 8th, 2017, how could you decide not to reopen this case? I think the decision not to reopen the case needs to be investigated, and we need to reopen the case.
Yeah.
Right? Vectoring in on the Clinton Foundation and their frauds. Okay?
I don't know, maybe you should be Attorney General.
No. All right, now this is also, now for those of us who like coincidences, all right?
Yeah.
What do you think this signifies? That the very same person who was dispatched to chase down the missing Benghazi emails is, what do you think the probability? The very same person who had the responsibility for doing that would then be tasked to chase down the missing IRS emails.
Well, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So we hit this story here. This is in Politico.
Catherine Duvall.
I think she's known as Kate. Kate, I'm going to skate Duvall.
It's not clicking for some reason. Let me try this.
I think you got it there already.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. This Rachel Bade is a good person who's been doing some excellent work on the
nice
Clinton
photo.
Foundation.
Nice photo of the Department of State.
Yeah. Very 20s looking, isn't it?
I wonder if it's the same photographer who took that picture of Imran Awan for the Washington Post.
It could be. But so if we go into the body of the story a little bit, Catherine Duvall, okay? This is a name, I mean, she should be interviewed by the FBI. She should be, and not a friendly interview. Lie detector interview, and here's a picture of, Guantanamo, and, I understand you're not that old, you got a nice long career ahead of you. I mean,
Prison food is delicious.
Exactly. I mean, this, and here's, Jim Jordan is a good man in Congress. This is preposterous to me that Lois Lerner, just on the facts of what I know in the public domain, that she wasn't, basically
Tarred and feathered.
Yeah, indicted immediately and convicted. I mean, if Corinne Brown, we brought up Corinne Brown before. I mean, Corinne Brown was a member of Congress, 5 years federal prison, $800,000 fraud. Lois Lerner is, giving the Clintons a pass on an obvious fraud, and, deciding she can win an election by targeting Tea Party conservatives up and down the land, and you're going to let her skate,
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're suggesting if you're going to do a crime, make it count. Not legal
I'm not
advice.
giving any kind of advice along those lines. So if we go back into it,
Seems to be the way, though.
but if I could just finish this off. I mean, so Donald Trump, this is much as I've said that Chelsea Clinton, there's Donald Trump. Much as I've said that Chelsea Clinton faces a grown-up moment here, where no longer can you just resist, persist, and write books about diarrhea. You've got to basically stand up now and say, look, this is an overwhelming body of evidence here. You face a simple choice. You can support your parents, right, and spend the rest of your life in prison, or worse, okay? Or you can say, look...
What's worse than life in... Oh, death if it's treason.
If it's treason. I mean, if what they were doing was operating the State Department to sell hypersonic weapons technology to the Russians...
Which they did, right?
Which they may have. I mean, that you start getting into treason with that.
Has anyone ever been put to death for treason in the United States?
Sure.
But I mean, like
Rosenbergs?
anyone who was a president or a presidential candidate?
It's always a first.
God, that would be shocking, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean...
I can't see that happening.
You never know. You never know. Yeah. But now I want to get into this additional details here, okay? So what you're supposed to do, sorry, the next page rather. Yeah. I've taken you to the fact that this new child that we've talked about is clearly a successor to the 7 years preceding activities from 2002 through 2009. It's not like it just came out of the blue, right? So on December 31st, 2009, when they submit this application to the IRS, the application asks, are you a successor to an organization other than a for-profit organization? And the IRS tells you, answer yes if you have taken over the activities of another organization. And if yes, explain the relationship with the other organization that resulted in your creation. So on the Form 1023, New Chai directors Bill Clinton, Iron Magazine, or others say, no, we're not a successor. We're not taking over the activities of another organization. Yet, again, Ortel's first law, you go back to the 31st of August 2011, okay, this document, the audit by BKD of New Chai in 2010, not available on the Clinton Foundation website, available in New York and California through the state registries. And here's a quote, I'm going to read it. Since its inception, and actually there's a paragraph I left out that says the same thing, in 2002, Chai, this new thing, has helped more than 2 million people access the medicines needed for treatment. Which, now think about this, which represents nearly half of all the people living with HIV and on treatment in developing countries. Half of all the people in the world in developing countries living with HIV, the Clinton Health Access Initiative has been working with them since 2002, but this new thing is not a successor. We're only dealing with half of the people in the world. I mean, which I doubt that claim, whether they actually were dealing with that many people. Right?
Do they have any information on how many, if any of them, have actually been helped by
Well,
this?
we're going to get to that in a second. Then you say, building on its model, Chai has expanded its scope. Well, you can't expand your scope to include efforts to strengthen healthcare delivery systems and to control malaria and tuberculosis. You can't do that as a charity. You start out your HIV/AIDS fighting, you can't then say, now I'm going to do whooping cough. And the next thing I'm going to do is, you know, I don't know, weight loss therapy or something. If you're going to change your purposes,
You got to refile all that stuff.
You have to, before you change it, you have to go to the IRS and say, I'm thinking of making a change here. And the IRS will say, okay, Jason, how'd you do with the old thing? Did you break any laws?
Yeah,
"Oh,
stole all the money.
Broke basically all the laws and stole the money. Oh, okay. You go to jail. You got jail. But anyway, this is a line lifted from this, in quotes, audit. As of January 1st, 2010, the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative, that's the thing that dopey Andrew Kessel registered on January 3rd, 2006, it is not a legal entity.
With the
Doesn't
crayon application?
With the crayon application and the Bozo the Clown outfit, transferred all of its activities into Chai. They flatly stayed on, whatever that date was here, August something, 31st, 2011, they flatly claim in this document hidden from the public, right, not on the Clinton Foundation website, yes, indeed, we did transfer this stuff into this new entity, all right? So here you have, and this claim on the 31st of August 2011 is before the Clinton Foundation files its paperwork concerning 2009, 10 rather. And it's right before Simpson Thacher Bartlett is hired October 27th or thereabouts 2011 to study what was going on with the Clinton Foundation.
That's where Kamiki Gibson worked?
No, she was at Williams and Connolly. That's where Virginia Bjorklund worked. So this, we've been focusing here in this presentation just on this new Chai. In addition to this illegal reorganization, this is the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation by far, simultaneously with doing this, they also illegally created and tried to cover up the reorganization of old CGI, Clinton Global Initiative, with new Clinton Global. So the same template here of lying about whether we'd done this in the past and creating a new entity. Same thing that happened with New Chai, they did with New CGI. Then with this old Alliance for a Healthier Generation, same idea. So there's at least 3 examples of illegal reorganizations covered up, definitely with the connivance of our IRS, likely with the involvement of Lois Lerner and her people. And Trump's Justice Department doesn't want to investigate this? I mean,
that's crazy.
Something's rotten here, okay? Meanwhile,
is it Sessions? Is it Sessions?
Could well be. Sessions. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Just hitting the dope.
He's hitting the dope. Yeah, why do you think they call it dope? Anyway, we put this up before here. We won't do it again. There's a 50-page sentencing memo that explains how real lawyers, how seriously they take charity fraud in Florida, and is the basis for putting an African-American congressman, 71-year-old now woman, in prison for 5 years over a relatively minor infraction compared to this. So we're going to go after those African-American women, put them away. Defense, she's got problems, I know, but we're not going to go after, the hot sauce expert and her husband, right? So now, this is something you wouldn't. This is a little weedy, and freely give you that.
What is it?
Weedy, into the weeds. So when you apply for federal tax exemption and you say that you are indeed a successor organization, you have to fill out Schedule G. All right, here's just a few of the questions on Schedule G that would trip up the Clintons. 2B, provide the tax status of the predecessor organization. Okay, the Clinton Foundation was never validly organized for international HIV/AIDS or health work as a charity. That's what you'd have to put down in the form. That, if the fact that you didn't describe the activities, kind of tripped you up, then certainly this disclosure would finish you off. Did an organization to which you are a successor previously apply for tax exemption? And indeed, the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative did, and there's no evidence that it ever received federal tax exemption. So you'd have to disclose that. All right. Was your prior tax exemption or the tax exemption of an organization to which you are a successor revoked or suspended? Okay, and of course it was. Explain why you took over the activities or assets of another organization. We're not going to do that. Then provide the names, last address, and the employer identification number of the predecessor organization and describe its activities. We're not going to do that. And the form goes on for another 15 questions.
Why do they bother filling these forms out at all?
They didn't fill this form out.
Oh.
They should have, but they didn't. Right? So the version that's filed with California and with New York, doesn't contain Schedule G because they lied in the answer about whether they were a successor or a predecessor, right? So to get any of this information we've been talking about, we don't need to click on this. We've done it before. There's the portal for the Clinton Foundation. This is the New York State Registry, and here's the California Charity Registry. You can get any of the documents I've been referred to yourself, satisfy your curiosity that I've gotten this correctly.
These are very good websites. I was really pleased when you introduced me to these because you can find out about all kinds of charities that are committing fraud.
Right. I haven't punched in. There's Hillary Clinton, and people are all cheesed off in the Democratic Party because she's coming to town, I think, in April for a big fundraiser for yet another charity.
To New York?
Yeah. The same day as the Democrats are holding a thing. She's got some new charity. I'm going to look into that one.
Maybe we should get like a seat at the charity and go there.
I don't think we'd do that, but we might sit outside. Maybe we'd get those Haitians to show up too.
Oh yeah,
we could do that.
Didn't that happen?
That will happen. Yeah. So if we go to page 11, all right. So this is interesting. Okay. Remember I said that these are activities that Unitaid between 2007 and 2009. The French, it's really accounting court.
Cour de compte.
Ooh, you're showing off there. You learned that in Texas?
Yeah.
So the Texas accent. So they file a report. It's a 128-page report with another addendum, and this details how much money was sent by the Clinton Foundation on behalf of Unitaid to selected countries. Now, I put the 11 big boy countries out here, and I looked. They even tell you part of the medicines for pediatric HIV/AIDS drugs, and part is for second line. Now, you asked the question about how do we know what happened to them to the drugs? Okay.
Well, to the people who took them.
Right. So pediatric AIDS, that's kids.
Right.
Getting HIV, and the main ways you can get are drug use, which it would be doubtful that
intravenous needle,
and then unfortunately sexual activity, which is unlikely, but sadly does happen in kids, where kids are raped by somebody who had HIV/AIDS. So this is to give a child HIV/AIDS medicine. I mean, what you're doing is you're consigning that child to taking that medicine for the rest of his or her natural life. And you can't just say, hey, here's a lollipop. Have the lollipop and have the pill. If you give a child HIV/AIDS medicine and that child has other problems, you could be accelerating those other problems.
Oh yeah, you need a doctor on that kid like every month.
Yeah, and you got to make sure that the medicine, that they don't have the kid swallow the pill with, medicine from the sewer.
Well, or even
water from the sewer.
Just tracking the progress of the disease would take, or the side effects of the pharmaceutical.
Right. And so this is one thing, and bear in mind that in this time frame, by 2007, 8, and 9, the Global Fund is giving tons of money into many of these African countries, the same African countries. So another question is, why did Unitaid and the Clinton Foundation need to provide this medicine into these countries where there are few doctors, There are, roads are not so good. The populations are scattered all over the place. There's no electricity, no water quality, no sanitation, all kinds of problems. No hospitals, no doctors, no beds.
You've just raised a question that I haven't thought of until right now. Why did they choose to battle HIV in a country where maybe there's like horrible water? What if you fix
Right.
the water? How much would that cost, and how many people's health
Right.
would that impact?
Well, and that's what some of the very thoughtful medical people have been saying for a long time, saying like HIV and AIDS, that's an issue, but before we get to that, shouldn't we make sure that there's like
Food?
well, let's just say that there's half as many doctors per 100,000 people as there are in the West,
Right.
as opposed to like 1%, whatever the number is. So that's for children. Now, the second line, now you think about what is second line HIV/AIDS medicine? That's when the standard medicine that works for like 80 to 90% of the cases, and mind you, advances in HIV medical technology have gotten to the place where it used to be, almost an immediate death sentence if you were diagnosed with HIV.
Magic
Now,
Johnson's
Magic
been alive
Johnson
for years.
He's a billionaire. He's jumping around. He's having all kinds of fun.
He looks pretty healthy.
He looks very healthy, and so he's got to be 60 at this point, 65 maybe.
Yeah, it's maybe 20 years he's been living with HIV,
Yeah,
right?
no, actually, it was 1991 when it was announced. I remember. I think maybe I have that wrong. But anyway, second line are drugs for the people where first line doesn't work. So these are people who you've been taking HIV/AIDS medicine and you've had a bad reaction. We need to give you more powerful medicine, and chances are that these are dire cases, right? Where you say you need the money for a dire case, but the dire case is going to die anyway. You just take the money, right? That'd be a real temptation if you're sitting there in Zambia, a country we'll go into in a second, and a whole bunch of goofy George Bush and dopey Andrew Kessel and these people say, how much money do you need for your AIDS problem? And you're given over 3 years $42 million into Zambia, which is a lot of money. This is just from Unitaid. Is there a chance that money just goes missing? And is there a chance that you say you needed $30 million for second line drugs and you get that $30 million, but you don't use it on drugs, you just steal it? Now, when we think about these populations, why should there be, this is an exercise that I go through in business, what is so different about these various countries that, let's say in Zambia, pediatric medicine for kids is only 29% of the total, right? Meaning that second line drugs are 71% of the total, but you go to Malawi,
Right.
it's mostly 81% for kids and only 19% for second line.
Seems pretty arbitrary.
Well, and then you look across the whole, the averages here, it's 47%, and then the others, the smaller ones, it's 53%, all in is 49%. You look at this, now let's look at the next page.
Yeah, November 1991, Magic Johnson created the Foundation to Combat AIDS.
Right. So here I've laid out certain information about Zambia and Malawi and the differences, okay? We look here at the population. Zambia is smaller than Malawi. Okay? Why would we need to spend more money in Zambia?
Maybe bigger AIDS problem?
Well, doesn't appear. I'll show you that in a second. And then we were able, one thing that's very different about these countries than the US and the West, it's like it was in the US prior to, say, 1920, that the percentage of kids, 0 to 14, is very high in these countries because they're fast-growing populations, right? So it's the experience, the relationship of pediatric to second-line drugs is going to be different. It should skew more towards children. And so we look at this and we see that second-line spending per adult, per person 15 and up, is $4.63 in Zambia, but only 27 cents in Malawi.
Wow.
And suggesting to me, just that if I were researching this, show me those receipts for the second line spending in Zambia. Show me those receipts, because as a guess, that money went to the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative. False invoices were sent to contend that drugs were purchased. And because these were hard cases, second line cases who were in trouble anyway with a tough disease in a remote place with no infrastructure, people said, yeah,
Just keep the money and
keep
let
the
them die.
money. Well, it's Zambia. Who cares? You know.
Right.
And this to me is just screaming red flags.
Yeah.
Screaming red flags.
For sure.
And we look at the different. You asked the question of adult HIV prevalence. It's 15.7% in Zambia, so slightly higher. 12% in Malawi. It shouldn't be this radically skewed result here, right?
Right.
Now, maybe there are innocent
So you're
explanations
saying
here.
15% of all people in
Adults,
Zambia
adults.
have HIV?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
that
in
does
Lesotho,
seem-
it's 30%.
Wow.
Yeah, they say, but again, there's another thing there. I hope that's not the case, and I hope what I'm about to say is not the case. But what do you think the chances are? You're sitting there in Zambia, and what rich Westerners say. You know what? Hypothetically speaking, if you had an AIDS problem, we could give you billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars.
So they
You know
inflate
what?
the numbers.
I have an HIV problem. And when you look at this stuff, you look at the sloppy accounting, the lying, the involvement of Rambaxi. There's so many decisions here that are just beggar belief.
Yeah.
That you've got to ask these tough questions, and these tough questions deserve answers. If there is an HIV/AIDS problem in Africa, have we compounded that problem by letting all this medicine in there? Because there are articles about how, and experts were saying that if you give people this medicine, you may create, the reaction may be to create a more virulent strain of HIV/AIDS by doing this. You've got to be very careful.
Huh.
And, certainly they have not been at the Clinton Foundation careful. That's one thing we know for certain. So if you want to see these statistics, not just for Zambia or Malawi, you hit on this thing. We don't need to do it now. But this is an index, that's CIA World Factbook, that has a bunch of statistics. We can say maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but at least they're consistently prepared for many, many countries in the world.
Right.
All right, so if we go to the next page, we're getting close. All right. We have our friend, in quotes, Joe Conason, who really has written that book that we feature, and we're not even asking for royalties or a percentage of your winnings for selling more books, Joe. You probably thought Bill was going to win, and he didn't, and Hillary was going to win, and this is a confession of charity fraud. So thank you for writing this book, and thank you for getting it published, and thanks for being it out there. This book, again, it's either fiction, and this is wrong, or it's correct. In July 2002, when Ira Magaziner was not an employee of the Clinton Foundation and Bill Clinton was not an employee of the Clinton Foundation, this book says the Magaziner believed he could persuade David Sainsbury, rich guy, and it says here, a member of Tony Blair's government, to, quote, put in another $1 million to get this HIV/AIDS thing off and running when it had no authority to do any of that work. Second quote, this is worth reading out loud. Once the relationship between the foundation and the Caribbean states was established, in other words, it was key to establish a relationship to have credibility. You can't have a relationship with a state, between a state and a non-existent entity that has no authority to do anything. You can't do that. And for all this stuff about people getting charged up at Mike Flynn and the Trump transition team of acting on behalf of the United States government when they're, why is Bill Clinton flying around the world in this period, July 2002, with Ira Magaziner and agents and this guy Jim Kennedy who works for the news division of Fox in a senior position? Why are they flying around the world entering into memorandums of understanding with governments, where the counterparty is a Clinton Foundation entity that has no authority to do any business and no capability of controlling this business, yet is soliciting hundreds of millions, billions of dollars for a sexy cause, and nobody's watching where the money went? And why did nobody care about that starting in July of 2002?
And it's still unknown where the money went,
It's
right?
nuts. So, with all this, you people in the United Kingdom, if you're still watching this, and our Crowdsource the Truth friends, if you're watching this, please contact as many people in the UK as you can and get them to explain this link right here. Okay? In addition, the Unitate contributions.
The dev tracker.
The development tracker. Okay? This claims, this is an official UK government thing that says the UK government has approved, or has actually entered into binding obligations, £57.7 million to this illegally organized Clinton Health Access Initiative. And if you scroll down it, you'll see the number of different grants, the amounts, the dates. And here's the disbursements. We have the dates of disbursements. Here's where the money went. Okay. None of this Clinton Health Access Initiative entity was never lawfully organized or operated at any time from September 29th, 2009 to the present. In no way, shape, or form. And yet, look at all these grants, the dates. You know, were we
sending millions?
Lots and lots of money. And this is all being done in this period here when there's a chance that Hillary Clinton might be president of the United States.
Wow.
Right? Who approved all this? Who did the diligence? What reports were written? Where's the file on all this?
With the yoga email.
Right. You know, it's not like one mistake.
It's quite a lot.
And then if we look at, here's this one here. This is a, quote, independent review done by some experts.
Quote, experts.
In quotes, experts. Uh-oh.
What does that say? Not
Can't
good?
find it.
Huh. All right.
The link does work on my computer, I know. So if you download the sides.
When we go from Microsoft Word to a PDF, it has some issues. That was on page 11.
Yeah, it's right. I think it's that green thing. Is it that one? No, it's this one here.
Sorry.
Or is it that one?
That?
No. All right. Well, let's go back to the slide.
No, sorry.
It's okay. We can just go back to the slide. For our I'll just summarize because we're running late. There is an independent review. When you hit this document at home, this link, you'll get to it, and it basically, the expert who reviewed this claims that the Clinton Health Access Initiative began operating in 2002, when it certainly did not begin operating in 2002. Then this is just a recent press release touting some new thing that they're doing. And here's from the UK press, there's a good friend of mine, Alana Goodman, who did not write this piece. That's the recent announcement of something. Look at all the players involved. The Clinton Health Access Initiative, Bill and Melinda Gates, USAID, UNITAID, the Global Fund, UNAIDS, UKAID. None of these people have actually checked the Clinton Health Access Initiative file carefully enough to understand that it's a complete fraud. So here we go down to this one. This is an article in the Daily Mail that shows back in 2015, Daily Mail anyway, in July 24th, they were beginning to take a look at, you know, why was the UK government sending 50 million pounds? In truth, it's more like 150 million pounds if you count UNITAID money, or 100 million, 100 million or so. Why were they trying to buy influence with the Clintons under a theory that she was going to be the first female president of the United States? And I think the answer to that question is, of course they were.
She was gonna crack the
Nice
glass.
picture.
Look at how red his nose looks.
Nice picture.
Up his nose.
It's amazing it's still there. So if we go back into the
According to Roger, that nose is like a vacuum.
Apparently.
He said that to an FBI agent.
Did he
on
really?
tape.
So, all right, now, to members of the UK investigative world, both, I don't know, it's MI5, MI6, and or the charity regulator and the equivalent of the Attorney General in the UK and in Scotland. Okay, up here we have the possible conduits of money, that the donors may have sent money either to these entities or from these entities into the Clinton Foundation. So the Hunter Foundation in Scotland, whoop, that's okay. Go back there.
Why did it do that?
I don't know. Throwing me for a loop. So the Hunter Foundation claims that it sent 10 to 25 million to the Clinton Foundation. Now, interestingly, we don't have the link up, but when you look at the most recent website of the Hunter Foundation, they've not that many references to the Clinton Foundation in it, the way there used to be.
Really?
Yeah. The William J. Clinton Foundation, the thing that Bruce Lindsay and Kessel and Diana Noble illegally created between, by March 12, 2008, went out of existence on the 7th of October 2017. Now, even though it went out of existence, that doesn't remove the responsibility of this entity from explaining what was going on from March 12, 2008 till 7 October 2017. Now, judging the size of the financial activities in those years, it was very small. Mm-hmm. But did that entity in the UK fairly disclose the money that was sent towards it, or did they hide bigger sums that were then diverted? That's a fair question. They also created, as if it weren't confusing enough, a Clinton Health Access Initiative in the UK.
They want it to be confusing.
Yeah. And there are also Clinton Health Access Initiatives and even some Clinton HIV/AIDS initiatives, Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiatives in different countries around the world. But the UK one was created on the 14th of February 2012 and then removed in June 26, 2015. Now going down the list here.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, nice gift. These are the bright bulbs, and just some of them, that have given money by various claims to the Clinton Foundation, to these illegal HIV/AIDS operations. Children's Investment Fund Foundation is a very famous entity. We did one of our earliest presentations on it. Don't want to go back over all the ground. Supposedly smart people. They've given, I think the real number is more like 50 million to these frauds in the heat of the frauds, 7, 8, 9, when there was no such entity, no such authorized entity. Unbeknownst to many, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation has a U.S. twin, okay, and it discloses on its forms that it's given substantial questionable gifts to this illegally organized CHI, which didn't exist, and to Harvard University at 225 Water Street in Quincy. And I can assure you, Harvard University is not based at 225 Water Street in Quincy.
I've been there. It's like a very old office next to a neighborhood. There was like a barbecue grill there.
Right.
Nothing to do with Harvard.
No, I don't think so. It's probably Harvard spelled with 2 D's, or Harverd University. But anyway, Elton John actually has done many great things to fight HIV and AIDS, including hosting charity concerts all over the place. He's got a UK foundation, he's got a US foundation, just like the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. And this is dangerous to do. When you have two foundations with the same name, it's easy to confuse how money routes here and there. There are challenges to doing this under US and UK laws properly, but there are real questions about why Elton John was allowing his good name and these foundations to make donations to these crooked charities, particularly in 6, 7, 8. Actually, Elton John gave money in 2005 when there clearly was no HIV/AIDS charity that was lawfully authorized. So, in addition, so these are 4 to talk about. Then you have this Absolute Return for Kids that also has a U.S. affiliate. It supposedly gave $1 to $5 million to the Clinton Foundation. This is a real question mark one. The Sergo Foundation, I only discovered this yesterday, is an entity recently established in England, tied to this lady, Mala Gonkar, who's a very famous and successful hedge fund operator, but her paperwork is so bad on the U.S. twin, which is the Sergo Foundation US, supposedly is an entity that was created in the island of Jersey. Well, you can't do that under U.S. law. You have to be, if you're a U.S. foundation, you have to be domiciled in the U.S. So
Sergo Foundation has an office in Washington, D.C.
Right, but the paperwork says that it's based in Jersey. Okay, so there's some real questions I have on that.
That's the old Jersey, huh?
This is old Jersey.
Not
it's
the new,
really not the Jersey.
New and improved.
Not Jersey. It's Jersey. So Princess Diana had many charities. I think this is. You're killing me.
That? I'm sorry.
I'm too zoomed in.
Sorry, Charles. Sorry.
Right.
Here we go. There we go.
Is this the equivalent of like the music comes up in the Academy Awards and running out of time?
No. I was too zoomed in because I'm trying to read all the.
It's okay.
Sorry.
So the Princess Diana Memorial Fund thinks that it gave money and has a press release we've shown before where they gave substantial sums to this old CHI that didn't exist. But when you look at the old CHI forms, you see that instead of coming from the Princess Diana Memorial Fund, it came from an American person. So there's some real questions about what happened to the Princess Diana Memorial Fund settlement and the regulation of that deeply troubled charity, which has been very controversial in the UK, sadly.
The Princess Diana thing?
Yeah, it had all kinds of problems. It's been the subject of extensive press about how somebody decided out in the West, a litigious person on the West Coast decided they were going to create like coin memorials or doll memorials, and there was a lawsuit back and forth, and the settlement of the lawsuit after she died, the settlement was that monies would be distributed to charities, of which one was this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative, which actually doesn't exist. It never existed legally. So there's a real question there. This Varkey Foundation claims it gave $1 to $5 million to the Clinton Foundation through the Clinton Global Initiative, which never existed, and has Bill Clinton as an honorary director or trustee, which he hasn't disclosed. Then this Aranda Rothschild Foundation.
Oh.
What? This is Lynn Forrester Rothschild, I think, claims that it gave $1 to $5 million to the Clinton Foundation. But again, you know, they haven't done their diligence. And this is a very famous old trust.
Well, also she's in the WikiLeaks Podesta emails and also photos of her hanging out with David Brock. And
Oh yeah. So I mean, if you wanted to put people to work in the Charity Commission in the UK, and here's just a few places to start. I can go on and I will go on, but
no
this
doubt.
is perhaps just enough to start with. Okay, and then we go to the next page, and we're almost at the home stretch here. Okay, we have DeRoy Murdoch, who's a good guy.
Oh, I've met him.
I've met him too, yeah. If we hit that link, this is his latest piece saying that, you know, Mueller has to, or somebody has to investigate. I guess we won't be able to get that.
No, we've got it.
We do? Okay. Yeah. To be fair and nonpartisan, the investigation into what happened in 2015 and 16 in the election cycle should have been an investigation into were the elections co-opted in either set of primaries and in the general election by foreign parties. That should be the question. And if we determine that something did happen, we need to go back prior to 2015-16 to say, you know, was what happened in 2015-16 unusual? You know, and it was more than normal, less than normal, typical? These are questions that need to be answered. To just simply say, we're going to train our gun sights on one campaign, the winner, and ignore everything over here, the other side, just at the surface level doesn't make any sense. And here's Roy Murdoch saying, you know, we got to really take a look at this gigantic amount of money that supposedly was routed, 152 million, that was routed towards the Clinton Foundation, and we don't even yet know exactly how it worked. We got to look at that. If we go to the next one, we have this article here where somebody's saying, you know, Trump really needs to sit down with Mueller. Now, I certainly was not named after this person, but explicitly, obviously, but when King Charles, who the first of England, who was a tyrant,
But he bred really nice little Cocker Spaniels.
Yeah, but he was, you know, he was a big constitution. It was the first real crisis, a major modern crisis in England in 1649, culminating in his execution following his conviction at a trial. He took the position, unwisely, but, you know, for his personal health, that he could not recognize the proceedings of the court. And some constitutional scholars do argue that he was technically correct, but that didn't stop the axe from chopping off his head, so he was still dead. But a similar principle, I think, applies here, which is that if Mueller's investigation was created on a false premise to investigate, it has to investigate a crime, but there's been no crime asserted to be the basis of the investigation, I would argue that what Trump should do is simply say, I will not, I will not cooperate in this at this point. I provide, give you all this information. It's a fishing expedition. You name a crime that was the basis for this, tell me the crime that kicked off, that you're investigating, that kicked off this investigation, and I'll answer questions about that crime.
Right.
But here's Jonathan Turley, who's a smart guy, saying this guy should sit down with Mueller. And I'm not sure I agree with, he was a great lawyer, but I'm not sure I agree with Jonathan Turley.
I mean, what's the upside? That was a horrible picture of the president right there, but what is Trump's upside in sitting down? I mean, it just seems like why? Unless he's compelled to do it.
To me, I wouldn't do it.
Oh.
Not giving legal advice.
Right.
Just personal advice. So then we have Hillary back on track again. And honestly, I shouldn't even be, I should be being cute here, and I should be saying, you know what, let Hillary speak as frequently as possible. You know, it's only going to help Republicans. But I mean, Democrats, do you really want to be a viable party? You want this approach? She's guaranteed to cost you votes. She's not going to be the standard bearer in 2020. No way.
Has there ever been another failed presidential campaign like Walter Mondale and everybody? It's like the end of the election, you never hear of those people again.
Well, there are some. Yeah, actually, my great-grandfather was a financial supporter in a small way of William Jennings Bryan, who ran many, many times. Just wouldn't give up running. That's all he does. I mean, Bernie will be running, probably he'll be there at the retirement home on his walker.
No, Bernie's not going to run again, I don't think.
I don't know.
2020?
No, but who Ross Perot ran a few times.
Yeah, but you never hear from anymore. She's run twice. She's lost twice. It's like
the third time's a charm.
Oh, good.
But yeah, put a sock in it. And if we go to the next slide, now this we've said a little bit. Maybe this won't work for you, but here's Sky News picking up the fact that this Sarkozy investigation is serious. Now, of course, Sarkozy is pushing back and saying, no, it's not so serious. It's preposterous. I think it's serious. I think that I take this French financial fraud prosecutor very seriously. I think there are a lot of smoking red flags out there, fires burning, particularly when you consider and tie this to the Clinton Foundation, to Unitaid, to Libya, to uranium, and bad reporting. The potential for corruption is massive here. Potential for corruption involving, attempted sales by the French defense contracting industry to Libya, to other people, greasing that through the Clinton Foundation, other ways, and the Sarkozy Foundation. I mean, this is going to go further, and it's going to touch a lot of people. And I think this is going to be a story that will help define what actually does happen or will happen in 2018.
He doesn't look happy.
He does not look happy, even though he's married to Carla Bruni.
Yeah.
That should make him happy.
She's had a lot of very odd plastic surgery.
Mm. So here we have this Ranbaxy case, and we mentioned Rosenstein's, in my view, conflict of interest because of his role from 2001 to 2005, failing to catch the Clinton Foundation frauds in a senior role at the Department of Justice. This Ranbaxy case, these two brigands here who basically were operating a fraudulent drug company that had
nice swimming pool, though.
Well, yeah, they're rich. They pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. They exited. They sold the thing. They collected hundreds of millions, billions, and then they reinvested. And fraud is their business.
Business is good.
Yeah. So if we go to now, here is an interesting one. In that one, yeah. I was, in preparing for this broadcast, I was going back over Joe's book, actually, and I just by accident got to an entry which said that Vladimir Putin and Bill Clinton had a private meeting at the World Economic Forum for 90 minutes alone.
When?
In January of 2009.
When
So
Bill Clinton
FBI
was just a private citizen.
I understand that. But remember the whole thing. Here's Hillary. This is in the first week as Secretary of State. Bill Clinton's over at the World Economic Forum, meeting with Vladimir Putin privately with Doug Band behind closed doors. What were they talking about for 90 minutes?
Pounding booze.
Was that a prelude to the Russian reset? Did it involve or set up any of these attempted deals that subsequently may have happened through Skolkovo? This is something that I think, if I were in the FBI, I'd want to know a lot more about that. How was that meeting? When did Bill Clinton agree to go to the World Economic Forum? Because that just didn't happen like, hey, I think I'll go to the World Economic Forum tomorrow. I mean, that was on the calendar, and how did those logistics come together? What emails were sent? Arranging who knew about all that? Was the Clinton Foundation involved in all that? Was this in violation of the Memorandum of Understanding? Yes or no? There are a lot of stories here.
What was it that they...
Look at this, Clinton will make money the old-fashioned way.
Stealing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. What does he mean by that?
Yeah. All right. So we've said in the past this we're almost done. The Clinton, that one, yeah. This is a way to search on commitments to action. That there are 3,600 of them supposedly, and you can search and see, what happened with these different things. Every single one of these commitments to action needs to be examined closely by the FBI. Every single one, to examine how much money was really donated, by whom, to what Clinton charities, did the donors, did the people who put any of these things together derive private benefits, deal-making benefits, were these substantial, or quote, more than insubstantial? This is an exercise that the FBI should spend a couple of years on. And it will yield a lot of money for the US Treasury, because there's a lot of what is called inurement, the appropriation of private gain by Clinton Foundation insiders, trustees, significant donors, and that's all taxable. And in some cases you can recoup fines, penalties, interest. We are talking here, these are projects which supposedly improve the lives of over 435 million people. Now, why didn't they just round it to 500 million?
I don't know.
And who did the calculation? How did they decide it was 435, not 434? I mean, I'd love to see, anyway.
Perhaps they could reinstate Robin Gritz at the FBI and put her to work on this.
Give her that department.
You know what I mean?
So the final one here, before we hit the link, a lot have been, particularly in hindsight, people on the Nobel Committee are saying, we should have never given Obama. Yeah, I don't think so.
This is the first president to be at war every single day of his term.
Yeah.
Got the Nobel Peace Prize before he even started the job.
I know. Idi Amin was not available. But it's really particularly surprising because the way this worked is that the nominations were due, I want to say like February 1st of 2009. He'd been in office since January 20th, 2009, and you give him the Nobel Peace Prize because he has absolutely no international experience until January 20th, 2009 as president.
No, it's president. I
Right.
thought you were going to say, he grew up in Kenya.
I didn't say any of that.
Pakistan.
He had been to Pakistan.
Indonesia.
Exactly. But, so it was all questionable, but we joke about this idea of My First Law, that you take the name. So what we're going to do possibly, if the Crowdsource the Truth viewers like this idea, we're going to take this book, Giving, which I call Taking.
Right.
And we're going to get Jason will have a copy, I'll have a copy. There's a way to create a random number generator which will randomly select the page.
Quinn Michaels could do that.
Well, I know how to do it.
Okay.
And so we'll do it, and then we'll just do like 5 or 10 pages live and see how many of them come up as outright frauds. Because the funny thing about this book, which really is preposterously, it's like an infomercial bragging about charitable work, which most philanthropists don't like to do it that way. You pick page after page, a name at random. Chances are the person named will either be in prison or exposed as a total fraud.
Wow.
Now, Barack Obama got a lot of crap for winning the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, I'll give the money away. Give all the money away, right? Now, in addition to giving it to the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund before it was lawfully organized to be a charity, which is a problem, you can hit the link. Obama donated $100,000 to a fraudulent charity. Now, this is this thing which, when I heard the story at first, I wasn't really, didn't have a lot of interest in following it. But this is a gentleman, Greg Mortensen, who wrote a book that got all kinds of attention because, in essence, he was, I think, hiking or wandering in some poor country somewhere, and he either fell or something happened to him, and he was nursed back to health. I forget which country it supposedly was in.
It's the foreign country of Chappaqua.
Yeah, and this is based in Montana, this charity, by the way, the state I like. Never been there, but...
I like Montana. I shot a movie there in 2008.
Yeah. That's anyway, so the story that was very, the one, he had wrote a book, and I think a movie, was that he got ill, and this small village nursed him back to health. So in gratitude, he sets up a charity to reward the villagers and help with it. And it turns out the whole thing is invented. The story's invented, the charities, papers are not. But nonetheless, Barack Obama, while President of the United States, gave this fake charity possibly $100,000. And this is, this, in part, in a small way, the big story here is it's not as if we live in the United States with nobody trying to help less fortunate people. It's not as, we spend $6 trillion a year on government. We spend $200 billion a year donations to charities. Charities themselves spend about $1 trillion a year. It's not like there isn't, there aren't many attempts to help disadvantaged find, really good causes. Mm-hmm. So good charities don't have to promote themselves, right? I mean, there's a lot of money out there looking for, smart places to help fund. And so when you see something, a marketing enterprise, a criminal marketing enterprise like the Clinton Foundation, with all these red flags, with these naked, literally naked, bold conflicts of interest, where you have grasping families who want to, get the highest political office in the most powerful country on earth, okay? You should be asking yourself, why am I going to give money to the Clinton Foundation? I mean, it just, with this, and then you should be saying, why are all our government officials, including Donald Trump at this stage, giving this thing a pass? Why aren't these people barred from fundraising in the UK, in New York, in California? It just takes one jurisdiction to say, you know what? Until these questions are laid to rest, until you satisfy us that you're a validly organized and operated charity, no more money. We're not yet asking for you to give it back, but no more fundraising. Why aren't you doing this in the UK, in the US, New York, and California?
But is the answer in the case of Trump that it would just look like he's going after Hillary? Why doesn't he just say, hey?
He doesn't have to do it. I mean, the IRS could do it, Congress could do it, Senate could do it, the state of...
You said his IRS guy is not there yet. Maybe it's... Because a lot of people have been saying, oh, he's not draining the swamp. He would have done it already. I feel like it might take more time.
That swamp is, that's concrete. It's a lot of clogged arteries in that swamp.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've come close to record time. Not really.
Depends on what record you're going
or
for.
less than 5, yeah.
Yeah. But it was a great presentation, Charles. It's always chock full of amazing information. And of course, we have outgoing. We can see Bill with the Energizer. It really is stunning how
he looks energized.
He looks energized, yes. But the crimes they get away with, and just the brazen way in which they commit them, it's like not even a good attempt to. I mean, who the hell makes their own form and submits it? It's like
the Clintons.
This 1040. It's a little too complicated. I just filled in $2 and mailed it to the IRS.
That's right. Yeah. So I know you have some gifted members in the audience, animators and other people.
Well, oh yeah, we saw that one. But wait a minute, there was something else I wanted to...
You did it already.
No, that we did, but we had this True Pundit article that just out this morning about... True Pundit is doing an incredible series on the Las Vegas shooting cover-up. And I've been in communication with Thomas Paine, but he's very busy. And, he's got death threats and stuff because he has got incredible sources in law enforcement and the FBI. And just during last week, we learned that rogue administrative forces within the FBI were hunting for the mole that's been feeding this information to the True Pundit Investigative Bureau. And now the mole is going to be dropping bombshells because they don't like the idea that they're being investigated by these criminals within the FBI that are trying to cover up what actually did happen in Vegas, and it should be stunning.
Well, and thanks to you for also focusing on this yourself, and then with Laura Loomer and others. I mean, I think you and those two people are pretty much the major players. I think Tucker Carlson's begun to take a look after you did.
There's a lot of people that have been investigating, but certainly the independent journalism world has been the driving force here, and definitely Laura Loomer deserves props. She has directly confronted the Las Vegas Metro PD. I mean, it's pretty ironic to think you got all these big, career police officers who have been engaged in massive corruption. Ramsey Dennison directed a film called What Happened in Vegas about multiple officer-involved shootings, staged crime scenes, cover-ups, just repeatedly showing really strong evidence that indicates a pattern and practice of wrongdoing by the LVMPD. And here is a 24-year-old woman, Laura Loomer, who comes and confronts them, and Lombardo's like quaking in his boots and forced to change his timeline of what happened.
She's very impressive.
Very impressive.
So, as are you.
Well, thank you. Now, was there anything else that we wanted to look at?
I think that's more or less it.
That might be it.
Well, I was going to say to the people who have time on their hands and want to try to do something amusing, I think it would be hysterical to create an animation of Hillary with Uma following her around, and have Hillary, you know, her head twist, her nose go long, her eyes bulge out of her head, her eye, you know, her eyes get all cracked and bloodshot. Maybe things could spew out of her mouth, or comments, etc. But, and then, you know, again with Mini-Me, Uma Abedin following her around. That'd be one very funny thing. Yeah. And then a conga line of, you know, the mainstream press, you know, so-and-so just admitted, I just admitted that I murdered 45 people. There's nothing here. That's been debunked. That would be pretty funny.
You need a visual effects department of your own, Charles.
Yes.
But I tried to get them making similar facial expressions
well
there
done.
For the Huma and Hillary poster. Well, Charles, we'll be back on Wednesday,
yes,
right?
Sir.
With another episode of Closing In. If people haven't watched the really compelling conversation we had with Dr. Corsi last week, I hope they will. And unless there's anything else you'd like to discuss, I think we will bid our audience adieu. I hope that people will become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth. And again, a lot of people, I think, presume that just watching the video somehow generates money to keep Crowdsource the Truth financially viable. It doesn't. We really would like people to go to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth and become monthly sponsors, even $1, $5, $10. It really helps. And that is growing slowly but surely as our viewership grows. We're talking about doing some travel. Obviously, there's more stuff in Vegas. We've got our friend Vince Edwards in Costilla County, Colorado, has his legal case coming up. I think it's April 2nd, he said. And so there's all kinds of things there that if people enjoyed seeing me in Austin, Texas with Mike Adams, the health ranger, super nice guy, and also was walking around the streets of downtown Austin speaking with Ole Damigard about the superb owl. Did you know that the Frost Bank building is looks like an owl? And it's 33 floors.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Anyway, I know you like those statistics. Anyway, thank you very much, Charles.
My
Amazing
pleasure.
presentation as always. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.